space-time transaction. Exchanging food for the elf princess at the start. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176. Soon after the announcement was released, Cheyenne Group compiled a paper that was sorted out by Cheyenne Chu. It contained some information about Cheyenne Group's nuclear fusion technology. For those who know the business, if you look at this information carefully, you will find that Cheyenne Group's route to building a nuclear fusion reactor seems to be really feasible. However, Suyi did not publish this thing to point out a clear path for other countries. On Blue Star in nuclear fusion research. On the contrary, this is what Cheyenne Chu summarized and compared with the current nuclear fusion ideas on Blue Star. If someone continues to study according to the route in this information, not only will they not be able to produce a useful nuclear fusion reactor, but they will be led into a ditch. Because this thing itself is something that Cheyenne Chu took out of context from the official information. It is correct, but if you don't look at the cause and effect, it will lead people in a completely wrong direction. It's the same as take it out of context, which is taken from don't take it out of context. Sometimes, the consequences of the lack of key information are much more serious than if you develop it all over again from beginning to end. Especially after Cheyenne Group really built nuclear fusion based on this information. This nuclear fusion feasibility paper that lacks key information will definitely lead some anxious countries into a pit. From this perspective, it is obvious that no one on the blue planet can see the problem with this information. About 4 or 5 hours after the announcements were issued by both sides and Cheyenne Group released the information, a knowledgeable expert immediately stood up. A well-known nuclear physicist in Bald Eagle praised, "Thank you very much for Cheyenne Group's free disclosure of this precious information. And the paper also uses 2 versions of the world's common language and Kyushu language, which saves me the time of translation. I carefully read this paper as soon as it was released. It is no exaggeration to say that this article alone is enough to make the world's research in the field of nuclear fusion progress by more than 20 years. Based on my many years of nuclear physics research and practical knowledge, I can judge that this new route written in the paper is completely feasible, and it is more feasible and reliable than the tokamak, stellarator and other structures we studied before. If possible, I hope Cheyenne Group can release more technical details. Nuclear fusion is a big deal for the entire human race. Once it succeeds, humans will no longer have to worry about energy depletion. Of course, if Cheyenne Group is unwilling to release it from a commercial perspective, that's reasonable. I absolutely have no intention of moral kidnapping. If possible, I want to apply to join Cheyenne Group and join the construction of the nuclear fusion test reactor in Jiuzhou. I have very rich experience. Whether it is theoretical knowledge or reactor construction, I personally have a solid foundation. I hope Cheyenne Group can give me a chance." Finally, the foreigner actually at Suyi's personal account and Cheyenne Group's official account at the end of the article as the first person to comment on this article. His professionalism is impeccable, and the series of online certification loggers indicate his status as a big shot. Under Cheyenne Chu's reminder, Suyi also took a look at the article published by this foreigner as soon as possible. Then I heard Cheyenne Chu say, "It is certain that before this, no official from Bald Eagle had talked to him or negotiated with him through other means. He took the initiative to check the paper we sent out and wrote these things to apply to participate in the construction of the experimental reactor. Of course, now he has been visited by Bald Eagle's FBI and they are trying to persuade him. I can hear the content of the conversation from their home surveillance. The people from Bald Eagle seem to hope that he will not come to Cheyenne Group and promise to give him more funds so that he can study the route of Cheyenne Group on the Bald Eagle side, based on the route indicated in this paper fusion of nuclear fusion lines. Oh, the line given now has been upgraded. Previously, it was said that $1 billion would be given first, but now it has been directly increased to $10 billion. And they also said that, even if he can't do it, it's not his fault. I have checked this person's information. He is indeed a big shot in the relevant field. and from his personal resume, this should be a very pure person. Compared with politics, he is more interested in studying nuclear physics and doesn't care which country he does nuclear physics research in. I think this person can be absorbed into the company. With me watching, there shouldn't be any mistakes. Xianshu said so. Suyi naturally had no reason to refuse. In addition to leading people into the ditch, publishing this paper actually has another important purpose, which is to attract talents. And isn't this a high-end talent that is delivered to the door? In fact, in terms of nuclear power plants, Jiazhou may have more talents, but you can't poach people from your own hometown. That's not appropriate point, so it's better to poach foreigners as long as there is no problem with the person himself. Suyi will not consider whether he will be coerced or not. He has plenty of ways to solve the worries of these technicians. If all else fails, he can go to the Black Palace of the Bald Eagle and kidnap the sleeping emperor to exchange for hostages. It's no big deal. And with Xianshu watching them all the time, it doesn't really matter whether these people are loyal or not. They can't possibly pass on any information. In modern society, there are too few people who can escape Xianshu's eyes. Only those agents who have received special training can do it. These academics don't have such skills and minds. Those who really have them have been screened out by Xianshu long ago. There is no problem with security, and they are indeed the people that Xianshu group needs now. So of course there is nothing to worry about. When people come, as long as they work hard, Suyi will not lack them in terms of treatment. At that time, these people will know what it means to abandon darkness and join the light, what it means to board the bus to the future. No, it is a rocket to the future. Xianshu's paper is quite obscure, containing a lot of calculation data, and most ordinary people, even researchers in related majors, can't understand it. Only those who have been immersed in this field for many years and are really capable can understand it. Soon, the second and third people appeared, affirmed the content of this paper, and praised Xianshu group for disclosing these technical data. Of course, not all of them are just praising a few words, and there are also many who are taking advantage of the situation and hope that Xianshu group can disclose more. Some of these people are thirsty for knowledge and really want to know how to deal with some problems in the future. Some people naturally have other intentions and want to get free information. Chapter 177. Suyi has already set up a nest. It is not known how many powerful technical experts he can attract to Xianshu group. But it seems that there are quite a few. Xianshu alone thinks that there are dozens of people who can be recruited immediately. There are also hundreds of people on the observation list. Xianshu needs to observe for a while before deciding whether to absorb these people. Of course, as time goes by, the situation has naturally changed from pure scientists who come out to publish their papers to a mixed bag of people. There are not only many people who want to morally blackmail Xianshu group to publish more information, but also many people who don't even understand the papers and start to point out the way. The more such people there are, the more difficult it is for Xianshu to select the ones who can be used. It now needs to allocate manpower and material resources to invest in the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor on Jiazhaoqiangdao. Not only do they need to allocate people and resources, but they also need to design a reactor and power station blueprint based on the specific conditions of the site and the technical information in the materials, and at the same time, they have to take into account other matters of Xianshu group. Even the aftermath of the uninhabited town in Suoguo. There are so many things to do. Later, it simply didn't bother to waste computing power on such things. It took less than a second to set up a special talent recruitment portal on the official website of Xianshu group. Want to see the most advanced technology in the world? Sign up yourself. Of course, as a special talent recruitment, there are thresholds for registration here. Those with a resume lower than a doctorate can't even fill in the first page of information. At least you have to have research experience and resume in related majors to be eligible to register and wait for Xianshu to screen. When Xianshu group just announced the opening of the special talent recruitment portal, it was all over the internet. But after a while, it was a scolding. What the hell? I have a master's degree in nuclear physics, but I don't even have the qualifications to register. I used to go to a nuclear power plant with my mentor, buddy. I took a look at your resume. When did the architectural design major have anything to do with nuclear physics? That's right. Why did the civil engineer come here? To join in the fun instead of going to make dust? What? Nuclear power plants don't need people to build them? My mentor and I spent more than a year at a nuclear power plant under construction. Isn't this enough? I looked at the details of the cooperation between Shionaju Group and Jiuzhou Nuclear Industry Group. The drawings for building a nuclear power plant were provided by Shionaju Group, and Jiuzhou Nuclear Industry Group was responsible for the construction. And the drawings have been delivered to Jiuzhou. You are an architectural designer. Why do they need you? Huh? So fast. What's fast? Do you really think it's a temporary cooperation? They must have been in contact for a long time. Not to mention that they are exchanging drawings now. With Jiuzhou's personality, I would believe that the reactor has been built now. No, why can't I sign up? I'm a doctor in a related major. Oh, the theory aspect. Then let me ask you, can you understand the paper published by Shionaju Group? Ahem. I understand it a little bit. Bah. You can't even understand their papers. What are you doing in there? No. Who are you? Leo Deng. Can you understand it? Take a closer look at my avatar. I'm awesome. Mentor, you need to have a certain degree and professional certification to enter this page. So the circle is naturally very small. Many people who complained that they were not hired wanted to complain, but then they were criticized, and then they looked carefully and saw the people who criticized them either this well-known big guy or that big guy in the field. In short, one is more awesome than the other. Soon the complaints died. Down. Although entering this recruitment page requires seriousness and not many people can join in the fun, the news inside is obviously not concealed. Soon there were enthusiastic people who moved the situation inside to the outside, and many people who couldn't join in the fun called it exciting. Many people didn't expect that the recruitment requirements of Shionaju Group were so high that even many people with relevant research experience were directly screened out. And the rules for admission are not only based on academic qualifications, but also on resumes. Resumes are filled out by yourself, so naturally some people will fill them out randomly. However, these people will soon find out that Shionaju Group not only knows that their resumes are fake, but can even show them their real resumes. Someone was about to say that Shionaju Group violated his privacy, but before he could say anything, he saw that after Shionaju Group took out his real resume, it also took out the content of the agreement that he had just confirmed without even looking at it. One of the clauses is that agreeing to the agreement is to default on Shionaju Group's access to personal resumes. Seeing this, even those who are dissatisfied can only bear it. As more and more people join in the fun, more details are also turned out. The comments about Shionaju Group first dropping the bombshell of building a nuclear fusion reactor, then dropping a paper, and then starting to recruit professionals in related fields have gradually changed from shock at the beginning to more and more shocking now. From beginning to end, I found that Shionaju Group really planned this for a long time. Apart from other things, the various details on the website alone could not have been made in a short time. It was just a temporary solution. Although I couldn't break the firewall of this website, I could still see when they made it. By looking through the code, I found that many guys tried to find bugs on the website to get in, because they heard that as long as they were hired, Shionaju Group would immediately transfer 100,000 yuan to the card number you specified as the travel expenses to Penglai Island. Of course, some people wanted to make money from this, but it turned out to be impossible. There was no bug at all. This website was impossible to break. I also heard that Shionaju Group does not need to go through manual review when transferring money. As long as it passes the website's certification, the system will automatically send money. I thought Shionaju Group had a lot of money to burn before, and they were not afraid of people finding loopholes on the website to make money. I didn't expect their network technology to be so advanced. It's more than advanced. It's to the point that I can't understand it. I can only say it's too awesome. Many people realized the awesomeness of Shionaju Group a long time ago, but today they refreshed their cognition again. The main reason is that before, Shionaju Group either held a press conference, threw things out, and didn't care about it, or fought with foreign countries, inexplicably brought out a bunch of high tech without explaining. This time is a rare initiative to interact with netizens in public. Many People have once again deepened their impression of Shia Group's awesomeness. Not only did they take out nuclear fusion technology to directly build reactors, but also the amazing network technology. All of them brought a huge shock to the spectators. Inexplicably, they felt that a giant had revealed the tip of the iceberg. Chapter 178. We receive so much funding every year, but we don't even get any useful information. Can experiments related to nuclear fusion be done secretly in hiding? It involves countless manpower and material resources, but you didn't get any information in advance, and we didn't find out until they took the initiative to announce it? Are all the Empire's expenditures being fed to the dogs? Angry roars came from the presidential office in the Black Palace. The head of Bald Eagle's overseas intelligence department stood in the office and was obedient, not daring to talk back at all. After the old man in front of him finished speaking, he cautiously said, "Mr. President, you also know that this Shia group is really evil. Weren't there any clues that could be found in the things they took out before? This is definitely not a problem of our intelligence department, but the last time Shia Group released carbon-based wafer technology, I asked you why you didn't get any news in advance. What you said was that Shia Group was not well known before and was not listed as a key observation object by you. That's why they developed the carbon-based crystal element without revealing any information." Sleeping Emperor asked, "Last time, you didn't pay attention because he was not famous. What about this time? Shia Group is not famous at all." Yes, the person in charge of the intelligence department said quickly, "but we really can't be blamed for this. I have used all the power I can to investigate matters about the Shia Group, but I still haven't found any clues, Mr. President. It's just like what you said. Nuclear fusion is not like other technologies. It can be researched behind closed doors. If you want reliable experimental data, you have to go through countless rounds. Tested, the power consumption is astronomical. In any country, it is impossible to hide this kind of experiment. So, I think, is it possible that the so-called nuclear fusion jointly carried out by Shia Group and Jiazhou is simply fake? Haha, what are they trying to do by deceiving the whole world with such great power?" The sleeping emperor laughed angrily at his outrageous remarks. "Sir, if you think about it carefully, what does nuclear fusion represent?" The head of the intelligence department whispered, "Represents unlimited energy, and when unlimited energy appears, who will have the biggest impact in this world? There is no doubt that it is us. Our knife music is linked to oil transactions, and the most important use of oil, natural gas and other materials is to act as energy. They claim that they have unlimited energy, relying on the miracles that Shia Group has created before. So regardless of whether this is true, even if it's fake, most people will think it's true. Our status as a swordsman will soon plummet. But lies are lies. As time goes by, and they fail to produce the finished product, this bubble will naturally be burst." The sleeping emperor said calmly, "Shia Group has created too many miracles before, and I have had many dealings with Jiazhou. What stands out in every step of these people is their composure. You said that they teamed up to make a huge joke to the world. The possibility is too low." No. The head of the intelligence department said quickly, "Sir, you see, you have also fallen into a misunderstanding of thinking and logic. Whether it is the speed of Shia Group's technological breakthroughs or the impression of Jiazhou's calm and solid work style, they are all what they want to create for you and everyone around the world. People watch. Aren't you fooled now? In my opinion, with the current level of human science and technology, it is still far from being able to successfully create commercially available controllable nuclear fusion, and it is not credible at all." The person in charge became more and more confident as he spoke. Originally he just wanted to find a reason to shirk responsibility. But after pushing and pushing, I suddenly realized that my nonsense seemed to have some meaning. Then, what will they use to deal with the whole world? Sleeping Emperor asked. "There's no need to do anything," the person in charge said, slapping his thigh. "Sir, first think about their purpose in lying. Why did you dismember Dol Petroleum system and hit us hard?" Sleeping Emperor looked suspicious. "Yes. The person in charge said quickly, if you think about it again, once the whole world believes that they have mastered nuclear fusion technology, and the first experimental nuclear fusion power station is already under construction, what will happen to our oil? Will no longer be synonymous with energy, but will become a mineral. Although it is still very precious, it cannot be compared with the necessity of energy. At that time, the value of oil will plummet, and we will no longer be able to use the original oil system harvest the world, and keep printing money, to solve some internal problems. They only need to keep this scam going for a few years. I'm afraid we won't even be able to afford military expenditures for overseas troops and the country will be in chaos. This is their purpose. The Kaishu people have really sinister intentions. As for how to make a deal then, they don't need to make a deal at all. It will take several years to build the experimental reactor. Is it reasonable? No one in the world can find fault with it. A few years later, they claimed that there were some unexpected minor accidents during the experiment, but it did not affect the construction of the reactor. It was just that it would take some time to officially put it into production and generate electricity, and it would be delayed for a few years. It was easy for them to. It can last for more than 10 years. After oil and natural gas are considered by the world to be no longer the main choice of energy, can our current situation of bald eagle survive for 10 years? The person in charge vowed, Mr. President, you know the domestic situation better than me. It is definitely not going to last, and they know it too. Sleeping Emperor originally disdained this guy's remarks, thinking that he was trying to pass the buck point, but now that he heard it, it seemed to be true point. After what Shianayu Group and Jia's how did, it didn't matter whether nuclear fusion was real or fake point, as long as the other party delays the completion of the nuclear fusion reactor a little bit, and then imposes certain restrictions on the bald eagle in other aspects, such as war, soon the huge bald eagle empire will be dragged down point. After all, even now, the bald eagle has owed a huge debt of tens of trillions of dollars. Once oil loses its energy attribute, their huge bald eagle empire will collapse in an instant point. This is almost inevitable point, because the entire empire now has too many places to spend money. Environmental protection organizations and animal protection organizations have to come out to collect protection fees for doing one thing, which often results in half the effort point. Without the oil knife system that harvests the world's high expenditures, the finances will collapse completely in 1 or 2 years at most, in the most optimistic scenario point. If the situation is worse, they may not be able to pay the interest on their debts in a few months. Chapter 179. When he thought about the decline of such a huge empire in his hands, the sleeping emperor suddenly felt very sleepy and wanted to take a nap point. Originally, he wanted to pull the head of the intelligence department out to take the blame, but he didn't expect that he would take a big thing point. But now that the matter is at hand, it is definitely not possible to go to sleep directly. He thought for a moment and asked, then what do you think we should do now? They want to defeat our oil knife music system by hyping up concepts, and we can also hype up concepts. The person in charge said, sir, please believe us, no one is better at hyping up these high-tech concepts than us. The sleeping emperor thought about it, and it seemed to be the case point. Although the bald eagle empire has not made much progress in recent years, relying on the foundation and reputation left behind in the past, there are really people who have harvested countless leaks by hyping up technology concepts. What metaverse, what virtual currency, what colonization of Mars, all of these are things that people with a little common sense think are nonsense. But they can really fool a large number of people to believe, and then make a lot of money by ripping leaks. What does all this rely on? Isn't it the result of the stereotypes left by the countless technological advances created by the competition between the bald eagle and the polar bear in the past few decades? Thinking of this, he suddenly realized point. No wonder the person in charge said that Shianayu Group and Jia's were hyping up the concept to fool the world. Isn't this what the bald eagle likes to do most now? So, what are you going to do? The sleeping emperor suddenly became energetic and no longer sleepy point. After all, in this field, their bald eagles are much more skilled than Jia's. I think the nuclear fusion they proposed is the same as the Star Wars plan we proposed when we competed with the polar bears before. They are all fake. The person in charge hurriedly said the polar bears were fooled at the time and invested huge amounts of money in it. In the end, this was also one of the important factors that dragged them down. I don't think we can repeat the mistakes of the polar bears, since they proposed nuclear fusion. I think we should also propose an equivalent concept. Equivalent concept? The sleeping emperor asked in confusion. What do you mean? He really couldn't think of any other concept that could be equivalent to nuclear fusion, an infinite energy source. In this era point, when they came to the table, they played the trump card. What else can I play? Too many, sir. The person in charge blushed, obviously very excited, and said quickly, for example, the virtual universe allows people to enter it and abandon all the troubles in reality. Another example is colonizing Mars or the moon and opening up a new home for mankind. These things are probably as valuable to the current world as nuclear fusion. Wait. Sleeping Emperor interrupted immediately. I remember someone mentioned these things before. Has there been? The person in charge was stunned for a moment. He is usually very busy at work. When he is not busy, he is either on vacation or playing golf. He only occasionally hears from friends that someone is hyping up some technology concept to make money. He has no idea what concepts others have hyped up. I don't know. When I heard someone mention it. Now that I think about it, it is probably because others hyped up and affected him. Although the sleeping emperor was old, he was not confused, and he still had some understanding of these technologies. Seeing his appearance, he snorted coldly. Even if no one hypes it up, what you said is not comparable to nuclear fusion. It's really difficult for you to give me advice here. Go find the expert group. I need to ask for their opinions. Okay. The person in charge ran away immediately after hearing this. As soon as he left the house, he forgot all the things he had just said. Originally, he wanted to shirk responsibility, but now it seems that this level has been passed. As for what to do next, what concept to hype up to compete with Jiao, whatever he wants, it's none of his business anyway. He will retire soon. And even if the bald eagle dies tomorrow, his property can be immigrated to other countries to continue living a carefree life. Who cares? Big news. Big news. The Bald Eagle Empire announced that it has made great progress in the field of nuclear fusion, claiming that it will soon build a nuclear fusion reactor that can be put into commercial use. The news came out only one day after the announcement of the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor test reactor by Jiao and Sci-Fi Group. Is it a healthy competition? Or the next day, a piece of news spread all over the world, attracting the attention of almost the whole world. It seemed to correspond to the construction plan of the nuclear fusion test reactor of Jiao and Sci-Fi Group. The Bald Eagle Empire and the Aosao Alliance also proposed to build a controllable nuclear fusion reactor that can be put into commercial use, and the location had been selected when the news was announced. It is located in a beautiful bay on the edge of a large city in the Bald Eagle Empire. And it is different from the impression that those Western countries have left on people, that they are slow to do things. Less than an hour after the news came out, local residents claimed that a large number of workers and mechanical equipment were found at the site of the nuclear fusion power station announced in the news. It doesn't sound like nonsense at all. It seems that they are really going to build a nuclear fusion power station. Many people who were skeptical couldn't help but believe it a little. After all, this time they seem to be serious. The news was said by the spokesperson of the Black Palace himself, and the location was announced by him personally. Even now, the construction has started. On the other hand, the joint siege of Sci-Fi Group and Jiao. It has been announced for almost 2 days, and only some netizens have found that some people who seem to be responsible for surveying and mapping are operating various drones, which seem to be surveying the terrain. There is not even any building materials, let alone any engineering vehicles. Soon, someone uploaded a bound version of the photos taken at the construction sites of both sides to the internet. Picture 1 is the nuclear fusion power station construction site of the Bald Eagle Empire, and picture 2 is the nuclear fusion experimental reactor construction site jointly established by Jiao and Sci-Fi Group. I don't want to say more, just look at the situation yourself. Don't you like to mock the slow efficiency of the West? They just didn't take it seriously. With this seriousness, I don't know how far their efficiency is ahead of your country. And in my opinion, bald eagle is a traditional technological power after all, and it is normal for it to develop mature nuclear fusion technology. Cheers how, haha, I'm too lazy to say more. Such a backward place actually dares to say that it has such high-end technology. Who can believe that it has it in this life? Sure. Enough. This kind of outrageous remarks soon attracted ridicule. Chapter 180. Some people are like this. They like to make some outrageous remarks on the internet and wait for others to scold them. Then they turn their mobile phones to vibrate mode and stuff them into dermatitis for the purpose of self-defense. The efficiency of a construction site depends on whether there is groundbreaking, right? Anyone with a bit of architectural knowledge knows that the various review and design processes before the construction of a special building like a nuclear fusion power station are extremely complicated. Now there are people surveying and mapping the terrain on site, sampling on-site surveys, and even conducting tests on rock formations deep underground. It is a very necessary process. After these tasks are completed, the design drawings may be produced. It's like this. The construction site on Kyushu side is progressing normally. Bald Eagle side is breaking ground immediately. I think there are only two possibilities. One is that they have been prepared for a long time, but this time they just happened to encounter the construction site on Kyushu side. They just announced the news about nuclear fusion. Another thing is that this is completely fake. I don't believe that construction of a special building like a nuclear power plant can start so soon. It is completely inconsistent with common sense. Wu Mayo is here to wash again. Haha, is it so difficult to admit that someone is advanced? I admit it, Mew. There is a high probability that this is something that does not exist. Why should anyone admit it? People were able to build F-22 and B-2 decades ago. Is it any wonder that they have conquered controllable nuclear fusion technology before you? On the other hand, there are some countries that were very poor more than 10 years ago and started by making low-end products. When they started to improve, they looked down on this and looked down on that. I don't know how they dare to say that they have conquered controllable nuclear fusion with the technological strength of Kyushu. Actually dared to directly build an experimental reactor, simply did not know what to say, and was not afraid of making people laugh. If you could create something that was ahead of its time a few decades ago, you can still build something that is ahead of its time decades ago. Is this what you mean? Bayozioneo is like this. If a country can stay ahead if it leads, then there won't be so many countries in the world, and they will have been annexed by those classical empires all over the world. After all, when those ancient dynasties dominated one area, which one was not the leader in the world? When people in Kyushu used iron in ancient times, people in other countries were still using stone tools. This was several generations ahead. So it should continue to be ahead, because the bald eagle suddenly stepped in and jumped out to say that it had mastered nuclear fusion technology. Another controversy quickly arose on the internet. The people of Kyushu who were still excited because Kyushu and Shiranayu Group decided to build the first operational nuclear fusion reactor in human history. Before their excitement has passed, it is like being poured a bucket of cold water on them. I don't know why, but the controllable nuclear fusion technology that was untouchable to the Blue Star people just a few days ago seems to have become worthless overnight. It seems to be a skill that cats and dogs have. This feels like the goddess you have been chasing for a long time and are finally close to catching, but the result is that everyone can touch her. Many people express disbelief in this, but there are also some people who were originally as if they were mourning because Kyushu brought it up first. But now they are directly resurrected with full health and start to compete passionately on the internet, continuing to maintain their spiritual home across the ocean. Can they really master nuclear fusion technology so quickly? Director Sue, your company's technical information has not been stolen, right? Old man Len's confused voice came over the phone. Although he also felt that the bald eagle might be bluffing, he couldn't believe that these idiots would dare to lie to people on such a big matter. After thinking about it, I couldn't figure it out. So I had to ask Sui point after all, judging from the previous technological level of Blue Star, if Bald Eagle really has mature nuclear fusion technology, the only possibility is to get it from Shia Group point since Sui has chosen to cooperate with Jiazhao. The possibility of hooking up with Bald Eagle again is very low, so the most likely possibility is of course stealing technology point. This kind of thing sounds absurd, but it is not without precedent. Point similar things have happened before when bald eagles and polar bears competed. Point Old Man Lin's worries were not groundless. Keep it in your heart, they can't possibly have this technology. No one can steal our technical information from Shia Group. Sui said with a smile. Point just kidding. The storage ball containing nuclear fusion technology data has been put into Xianshu's main computer. Xianshu's main computer was tied with a rope and hung on Yuling's wrist as a bracelet. Point in this world now, except Xinghan, who can steal things from Yuling. What's more, even if they steal the storage ball, with Blue Star's current technology, they can't read the data inside. Point it's impossible to even recognize that this thing is something like a memory card. It's probably just treated as a marble. That's good. Hearing his determination, Old Man Lin felt a little relieved and then asked, since they can't get your technology, they suddenly announced that they have mastered nuclear fusion. Is this true or false? I always feel it is false, but I think they wouldn't be so crazy about such a big thing, right? What if they think the nuclear fusion technology we announced is also fake? Sui asked rhetorically. Point when Old Man Lin heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and he immediately reacted, you mean, they thought we were lying when we said we had nuclear fusion technology, so they lied with us? What's the point of that? People are playing in the virtual economy, and their main focus is financial stock trading. Do you think it makes sense? Sui explained, not only do they think our nuclear fusion technology is fake, they also think that we suddenly announced that we have conquered nuclear fusion. We want to imitate their previous Star Wars plan and use this method to bring them down. Do you understand now? I understand now. Old Man Lin's frown suddenly relaxed. Point as a member of the older generation, he enjoyed the conflict between the bald eagle and the polar bear. The intrigues between these two major forces will also be studied in depth later. I'm very impressed by the Star Wars project. Point now, when Sui said this, I immediately understood why Bald Eagle also claimed that he had conquered nuclear fusion technology. Point it's completely like judging a gentleman's belly with the villains heart. Point thinking that others are just like themselves. They will hype up a false concept to deceive others to achieve their own goals. Now, I'm looking forward to what their expressions will be like when our nuclear fusion power station is finally completed. Old Man Lin couldn't help laughing. These grandsons are still as shameless as before. Ha ha ha. Chapter 181. There is no need to pay any attention to the little noise on the internet. Point. Even after realizing the real situation, under the advice of Old Man Lin, the Jiazhao officials not only did not ban those who jumped out to sing bad words at this time, but let them talk. Point say whatever you want. Point compared with those debates that do not get a clear answer most of the time, there will undoubtedly be an answer to the nuclear fusion issue. Point the Bald Eagle dared to do this because they were sure that Jiazhao had not conquered the nuclear fusion technology, so they dared to follow. Point when the first experimental reactor of Jiazhao and Xianyu Group is built and starts to generate electricity, all the rumors will naturally be broken. Point when the truth is revealed to the world, those who look down on Jiazhao will naturally get the punishment they deserve. While the nuclear fusion on Blue Star was making a big fuss, Sui and the military factories on Jiazhao did not forget about the magic world next door. The first batch of weapons had not been fired halfway, and the second batch of weapons had all been delivered. Point unlike the first batch of conventional weapons, the explosives filled in this batch of weapons are not explosives such as TNT. Point all of them are metallic hydrogen produced by Xianyu Group. Point this kind of thing with terrifying energy density is powerful and stable enough to be used as a battery, but it is also good as a bomb. Point we followed Sui's instructions and went to the headquarters of the reinforcement as soon as she received these weapons. She brought the new weapon operation guide along with the weapons, as well as some suggestions and guidance given by the Jiao military. After studying these new weapons, although these weapons look the same as the previous weapons, even the weight is the same as before. The shells can be directly fired after being stuffed into the barrel as before. But the filling inside is different, and of course some details are also different. For example, a shell filled with dozens of kilograms of metallic hydrogen looks exactly the same as the previous shells, but the power of the explosion of this thing has increased by at least 20 to 30 times. Can it still be fired as before? That's obviously not possible. The increase in power brings an increase in the killing radius. The killing radius is different from before, so the rhythm and interval of the artillery fire are of course different. If we still fire in the same way and array as before, it will obviously cause a lot of firepower waste. As the weapons are replaced, these need to be adjusted. The good news is that there are still a lot of old weapons stored in Mengchuan City, and there is no shortage of ammunition in the short term. So there is no need to rush to move all these new weapons. Besides, since the bombing that day, the coalition forces besieging Mengchuan City have dispersed, and it is said that the foreign races in the northern border of the Qiang Empire have a tendency to regroup. But it will take some time to attack Mengchuan City again. There is no defense pressure in the short term. There is no need to worry about not having time to train new weapons without considering the logistics and supplies. The entire Mengchuan City has spent these days in the uninterrupted boom. This magic weapon that the city lord found from nowhere has also become a unique landscape in Mengchuan City. Although under the strict order of the city lord's mansion, no one is allowed to approach the reinforcement within 500 meters of the barracks, it does not prevent many idle people from watching the excitement from a distance. But Wee Wee was different. As the city lord, she could go directly to the scene to watch the fun. After that day, she found that she seemed to have a disease called firepower phobia. No, to be specific, she had an insatiable firepower disease. For the overwhelming firepower, she felt that no matter how much it came, it was not too much. The more powerful, the better, and the denser the array, the better. Just blow her mother up, and it's done. Isn't this more interesting than women shooting at each other with bows and arrows? As for these cannons, she likes them more and more. These days, she spends half of her time in the reinforcement barracks almost every day, and dares not do anything else but watch these soldiers from Kaishu test fire various types of cannons and rocket launchers. Sometimes she even shamelessly goes over and fires a few shots to satisfy her with her status here. The reinforcement certainly can't refuse, so she can only go. In order to satisfy the curiosity of Her Royal Highness, Lin Yiling, as the commander-in-chief, even specially dispatched an automatic artillery vehicle for her. The magical experience of being able to fire by rubbing the screen twice made Wee Wee exclaimed that it was awesome. These are weapons that defeated our million-strong army on the wide artillery test field, and Key looked at the neatly arranged truck guns in a trance. With the vitality of a 7th level warrior, she was not directly killed at the time, and of course it would be difficult for her to die afterwards, especially when we used the water of life to heal her wounds, and Key completely recovered in less than 2 days. It was so fast. After all, her cultivation was banned, and she became an ordinary person. We did not treat her too harshly. She even took her to visit the artillery position and the way to fire. Of course, this was not because Wee Wee was careless. The main reason was that she had proposed a few days ago that the Elf Kingdom and the Coalition take a few thousand barrels of water of life in exchange for the princess, but they directly refused and were too lazy to talk. Originally, she thought Anki had some value, but now it seems that she has no value at all. In this situation, there are only two possible outcomes waiting for Anki. One is to find a time in the next 2 days to send a cup of poisoned wine to Anki and let her die. Another is to pack this person up next time you meet Suyi and see if Suyi wants it. If he wants it, just give him something as a gift. After all, she is a very beautiful maid. Wei thinks Suyi should be very interested in her anyway. Anki has been to Mengchuan City, and it is definitely not possible for her to continue to stay in the magic world. Since it has been decided not to keep her in this world, it doesn't matter if she shows her some secrets. Canon, powerful, right? Wei raised her eyebrows. Canon, Is it a way of using fire magic? Anki looked at the strange shaped truck cannons from a distance and wondered, with so many such weapons, how many magic cores are needed for a volley? The magic world also has large siege crossbows engraved with magic arrays. The effect is actually similar to that of cannons, but that thing consumes a lot of magic cores for each shot. These magic cores are all dug from monsters, and are precious magic resources, and Key obviously misunderstood these cannons as something like a magic siege crossbow point. Seeing this, Wee smiled and said, "You don't even need a magic core. It's much more powerful than you think." Chapter 182. It doesn't need a magic core? Then what does it use as energy to drive these strange arrows? Looking at this weird looking vehicle mounted automatic turret at close range, and Key still couldn't believe that his army of 1 million people could actually lose to these iron lumps, gunpowder. Wee waved her hand and said, "This thing is more complicated. If I tell you, you probably won't understand it. Anyway, there is no magic used in it. Depending on the internal filling, the effect after the explosion is also different. Different shells are fired completely differently. The one that blew you up that day is called a rocket bomb, and the warhead inside is called a cloud bomb. It is currently the most powerful bomb here. How do you feel?" Key's face froze, remembering some not so good memories, and whispered, "It's strange. After the explosion, there was not only hot fire and strong shock waves, but also a suffocating feeling. It was very difficult to even breathe. At that time, I thought it was your human magic union that had developed some new type of magic. I didn't expect it to be this kind of thing. After the cloud bomb explodes, it will quickly drain the surrounding air. Of course, it is normal to feel suffocated. That is, because she is a 7th level warrior, and her physical strength has already exceeded the limit of carbon-based creatures. Otherwise, these 2 consecutive cloud blast bombs hit her face, and her body would turn to ashes. After hearing her question, Wee said calmly, "Principal, how would I know? I didn't make this thing." With that said, he took Anki to a temporary maintenance workshop point. If so many guns are fired next time in a high intensity battle, of course some vehicles or the weapon systems mounted on them will malfunction. Several hundred of the 10,000 soldiers are engineers who are professionally responsible for equipment maintenance. There is a lack of heavy equipment here, and in many cases it is of course not that convenient for large vehicles to be repaired and maintained by these people alone. But the good news is there's no shortage of strong people here. Any 2nd or 3rd level warrior can remove some parts with bare hands that require mechanical assistance. It saves a lot of trouble. Hundreds of maintenance engineer masters, each with a few local cattle and horses in Mengchuan City, can barely guarantee the maintenance of these thousands of vehicles. When it comes to transporting ammunition during wartime, these local strongmen in Mengchuan City are much more useful than the cat trucks that transport supplies and ammunition. It's not that Jiao and Suyi can't afford to send these vehicles. The key is that the number of people who need to be sent is limited, and the vehicles need people to drive them. So we can only find these ways to replace it. As soon as Anki entered this huge temporary maintenance workshop, he saw that it was filled with various vehicle turrets. Many weak humans were directing some huge horses and oxen to do this and that, and they seemed to be very busy. Cows and horses are not adjectives here, but descriptions that are consistent with reality. 2nd and 3rd level human warriors usually have some social status, much higher than ordinary people. In this world, where blood is supreme, let these powerful warriors listen to the orders of a bunch of ordinary people, and do this and that. It's definitely not going to work. Moreover, they also need to be stationed on the walls of Mengchuan City. So the coolest we found for the engineers were not humans, but a group of orcs. Minotaurs and horseheads are the most honest and obedient and least aggressive among the orcs. There are almost none. But at the same time, these 2 kinds of orcs are powerful. As long as they reach adulthood, they are comparable to 2nd and 3rd level human warriors. Some individuals can even have the strength of a 4th level warrior, but in a human country like the Blazing Sun Empire, the status of these orcs is usually very low. Although the average strength is not bad, the high-end combat power is almost non-existent, not to mention the bloodline. Those so-called noble bloodlines are basically those whose ancestors have produced super strong people. Under such circumstances, the status of these orcs in the Blazing Sun Empire is naturally very low, even inferior to ordinary people. And although they are hardworking and honest, they are usually timid and afraid of fighting, to the extent that even the strongest men in the human army are too lazy to fight. The most they can do is to forcibly capture a group of them during a war and send them to the logistics force to transport supplies. This is naturally the case now. When we heard that the female officer responsible for communicating with her mentioned the manpower problem and needed a group of strong and powerful people to help do some heavy work instead of machinery, she immediately gathered all the Tauren and horse-headed people in the city without thinking. 30,000 cattle and horses were sent to the reinforcement camp that day. These orcs were quite scared when they were recruited at first, thinking that Mengchuan city could not be defended, and the city leader wanted to drag them to fill the line. After arriving at the place and finding out that I only needed to move things around, I quickly settled down. Very obedient. It can be said that they do whatever the engineers tell them to do. Originally, in this kind of world, if you were drafted into the army, even if you didn't need to fight, you just had to work. You had to bring your own dry food, and you didn't get paid. Although these cows and horses were obedient, their enthusiasm for work was not very high at first. Coupled with the language barrier, there are many obstacles to communication between the two sides, until they worked in the camp all morning, and when they were ready to take out the dry food they brought to fill their stomachs at the end of the work, they were suddenly pulled into a temporary open-air canteen by the engineers, who led them to work. Here, these strong and powerful beasts of burden, who were at the bottom of the magic world, had the most abundant meal in their lives. After eating, the senior officers of the reinforcement who had used the language access card came to tell them the treatment for helping in the camp. Hearing that they would not only be provided with food and accommodation, but also be paid afterwards, these orcs who were used to being exploited could not believe it for a while. But the meal was eaten. Therefore, with a skeptical attitude, these orcs began to actively cooperate with the work of the engineers and carefully learn what they were taught. The efficiency of mechanical maintenance quickly increased, and even experienced engineers said that, even if there were professional equipment here, they might not be as fast as these orcs. For example, dismantling the wheels of those trucks under normal circumstances, you have to use a jack to lift the car first, and then use a machine that is specially used to remove the wheel bolts of the truck to hit it one by one. Even with mechanical assistance, it takes more than 10 minutes for one person to remove a wheel. But after teaching these orcs, everything became simple. What jack? They don't need it at all. A few people lifted the car a little, and another one took a wrench and went up to tighten it. The speed was faster than any special machine. After a few days of getting along, these soldiers from Kaishu had a very good impression of these orcs, and goodwill is mutual. When you show kindness to others, others can certainly feel it. In the eyes of orcs, these people who came from nowhere, dressed strangely, but can use extremely powerful weapons, are no different from angels. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183. Compared to this world's social atmosphere, based on hierarchical bloodlines, the Kaishu warriors from Blue Star are simply a breath of fresh air when getting along with these orcs. Not only did he not have any intention of discriminating against them, but he treated them extremely well. Eat and drink together. These orcs, who were used to being discriminated against, were greatly moved. They even worked a lot harder, and they also tried very hard to use their not very flexible brains to learn some words that Kaishu people often said. After getting along for so many days, the two parties could not only work together tacitly, but also have no problem with simple communication. So when Wee and Anki walked into the maintenance workshop, they saw many engineers wearing dirty work clothes, directing the orcs to work. And even working with the orcs in this kind of world, there are bloodlines within ethnic groups, and of course there are chains of contempt between different ethnic groups. Humans and elves are considered to be two of the noblest races in this world. The remaining races, such as dragons, although their status is not low, are too few in number to be counted. People of these two races look down upon any other race equally. Naturally, this includes vulgar orcs. So, as soon as he entered the workshop, and Key instinctively frowned, showing displeasure. In her opinion, humans are a similar race to elves after all. It's obviously degrading to mix with these vulgar orcs, even if they just order the orcs to do their work. Wee, on the other hand, has been here many times, and already knows the situation here well, so she is not surprised. Because it has been an accident. At first, she heard that the reinforcement needed a group of coolies. When she sent these tens of thousands of orcs, she was actually prepared that these orcs would not be able to get out alive. After all, when the female officer asked her for support, she said that some people with sufficient strength were needed to replace some mechanical work. She had seen Blue Star's machinery before, but she didn't know what was different about the machinery. She thought these machinery referred to the large engineering vehicles that transported automatic turrets and rocket launchers instead of machinery. Even second and third level warriors would be exhausted. Unexpectedly, after staying in this camp for a few days, not only were none of the orcs exhausted to death, but they were even kept smooth and fat, becoming stronger and fatter occasionally. A few orcs were injured while working, and these reinforcements did not intend to let them go. Instead, they hired professional military doctors to treat them seriously. The wounds were sutured, and various drugs were injected to promote wound healing and prevent wound infection. If they were seriously injured, they would even give the water of life to these orcs. This operation confused Wee at first. Later, while the female officer responsible for contacting her was around, she specifically asked them why they were so nice to these orcs. As a result, I suddenly asked the civilian girl in the reinforcement and was confused. After being stunned for a while, he replied, "Is this considered good? They do such heavy work, so the pay is very average. That means the conditions here are not enough, otherwise there would be a lot of subsidies. The internal treatment of these soldiers is very good. Wee has also learned about it, so she knows it very well. What she didn't understand was another thing. These orcs, if you don't give them any treatment, they will still be obedient and work as you are told. After all, they are vulgar, and they are completely unworthy of recognition in our world. In fact, there is no need to treat them according to the standards of your own warriors. Disburse benefits." The female officer was obviously surprised to hear such words. She held it in for a long time before saying, "Although they look a little weird, they also have their own emotions, anger, sorrow, and wisdom. Aren't they also human beings?" The topic ends here. Although she didn't get a specific answer, Wee seemed to feel that she had gotten some answers through what she saw while running around the camp these days. The work enthusiasm of these orcs can be said to be unprecedentedly high, which is completely different from the usual situation when overseers use whips to urge them to work. There was even an accident yesterday. A spy from the coalition forces sneaked into Mengchuan City. After discovering something unusual in the military camp, they wanted to come in and inquire about the situation. As a result, they accidentally bumped into Takayasu warriors patrolling the camp. Although these two warriors were armed with guns, the situation at that time was that the coalition spies spying on the news were 4th level warriors. The place where the two sides met was too narrow, and the firearms had the advantage. Can't perform at all. Just when the two soldiers were almost killed by the sneak attack of the coalition spies, a group of Tauren who had just returned to the camp to rest after dinner happened to pass by. There are 4 Tauren in total. 3 are 2nd level and 1 is 3rd level. This kind of strength is definitely not enough for a 4th level warrior, not to mention that these orcs are originally timid and afraid of fighting. And their combat effectiveness is often very poor, far inferior to other races of the same level. But at this critical moment, the 4 Tauren encountered this scene and did not think about running away. Instead, they mustered up the courage to rush forward and fight the assassin who sneaked in, saving the Takayasu warriors. By the time the knights sent by Wee to protect the reinforcement camp arrived, all 4 Tauren had been seriously injured, and one of them even had a leg chopped off point, but he still dragged the spy tightly, so that the man's idea of tying up a soldier in the camp and going back to torture and ask for information failed. The assassin who sneaked in was killed by the knights who rushed over, and the Takayashi warriors were not injured. They also had nothing to say about the 4 Minotaurs who tried their best to save people. They immediately pulled the military doctor to treat them, and used all the means they could. Even the leg that was cut off not long ago was reattached to the Minotaur. Although it may cause hidden diseases after the reattachment, it is much better than being disabled directly. After that, we severely punished the leader of the knights who was responsible for protecting the camp, and at the same time, strengthened the protection of the camp. After all, these Kaioshu warriors are just ordinary people. It is too difficult to deal with those warriors or magicians with strange means. This story is actually not that brilliant. It is about encountering an assassin sneaking into the camp, confronting the patrolling soldiers, and then the Minotaurs who are cool is rushed out to save the soldiers. But the key is that these Minotaurs are not good at fighting, and their nature is extremely cowardly. During a war, they would be weak, even if they were asked to stand on the wall and move stones and throw them down. It was this group that did not choose to escape when faced with intruders who were stronger than themselves, but fought hard. Chapter 184. Afterwards, we went to visit the Tauren in person and asked them why they mustered up the courage to come forward. After all, these orcs were just working as coolies, so it was basically impossible for them to know any secrets. The infiltrator's goal couldn't be them. After encountering the 2 patrolling soldiers, the infiltrator's intention was to capture the 2 men and torture them. He had no intention of going deeper into the camp. Naturally, there was no need to kill these Tauren to prevent them from leaking information. As long as they were willing and left at that time, the infiltrators would never waste time dealing with a few worthless orcs at such a critical moment. These Tauren are just stupid, not really stupid, so they can't even understand this. However, when faced with the inquiry from this noble female city lord, the Tauren lying on the hospital bed gave a simple answer: they are good people. No one can treat us better than them. We cannot watch others harm them. Since then, Weewa's mentality has undergone some slight changes. I have been running to the military camp these days, not only to be curious about these weapons, but also to have more contact with these blue star people. Compared with the shock brought by the overwhelming firepower when those weapons were fired, it can be said that the shock brought to her by these blue star people when facing different groups of people was not inferior to those weapons. Through these days of careful observation, she keenly discovered a point. Even the lowest ranking ordinary soldier in the Kaioshu reinforcement army, knowing her identity, was respectful on the surface when facing her, but in fact he was not as inferior as other people in the world when facing her. The way he looked at her was actually not much different from the way he looked at those Tauren. Of course, this lack of difference refers to the mentality and status of both parties. People do not think that they are inferior to her, a princess. In other aspects, it is still different from watching the Minotaur. After all, in addition to her noble status and a bunch of messy titles, Wee is also a well-known beauty in the mainland. These little warriors were generally shy, and few of them dared to look directly at her face. This discovery made her a little angry at first. After all, she was deeply influenced by the theory of blood. Wee thought that she was much nobler than those orcs, but after comparing the attitudes of the orcs before and after, she realized. Perhaps these blue star talents are right. Human thinking will be assimilated by the group. These days, Wee can be said to have a deeper understanding of this. So now, after seeing the displeasure in Enki's eyes, she was very calm and said with a smile, "Why does Her Royal Highness Princess Enki think there is any problem? Why do these people, why do they hang out with lowly orcs?" Enki frowned and said, "It's simply degrading." Then, why do you want to cooperate with those coalition forces composed of goblins, dwarves, and orcs to attack Mengchuan City? Wouldn't that be even more humiliating? Wee said with a half smile, "That's different. It's just that we have the same goal as them. This is not cooperation." Enki had no expression on his face and said in a calm tone, "In the coalition military camp, they are only qualified to live on the outermost perimeter and watch the gate. At This moment, a flash of light suddenly flashed through Weiwu's mind. The books on Tzu's Art of War she had taken from Suyi before seemed to suddenly come to her mind. She was stunned for a moment, and then she prayed secretly, "So, your coalition is destined to fail, and will not be able to enter Mengchuan City." Not only was Enki not angry when he heard this, but he looked at the bustling repair shop and chuckled. "Your Highness, the princess thinks that these iron knots can stop the storm in the north." Everyone, including Weiwu, knew that the last almost one-sided war was actually just an accident point, and it will definitely not be the end of this war. The death of hundreds of thousands of troops under Mengchuan City will not stop the desperate foreigners in the north. Some of them are human beings and some are excellent warriors. The previous million-strong army was just an appetizer, and it was far from the time when they were exhausted. The next attack will only be more fierce and violent. And after being bombed, they will obviously respond to it. Although these measures may not be effective, it is obviously impossible for Mengchuan City to solve all the problems with one round of bombardment like last time. It's not just these iron bumps, it's mainly because I've been wandering here recently and suddenly learned something new. Weiwu smiled, not knowing what she thought of, and stopped walking around the camp with Anki interested. He took her directly back to the castle. After letting Anki stay in a room and letting people watch her, Weiwu ducked into the trading platform. A moment later, Suyi appeared on the platform. "Why are you so anxious to find me? I have a question to ask you." Weiwu came straight to the point and said, "Do you think it's possible for me to disintegrate the coalition forces outside Mengchuan City, or even let one of them be used by me?" With that said, she told Suyi everything about the chat she had just had with Enki and what he saw in the military camp of the Kaioshu reinforcement. "I think the status of the orcs, goblins, dwarves and other races was too low before. They were just cannon fodder in the coalition. Everyone is an intelligent creature. Even if they agree that they are inferior and should be cannon fodder for the elves, they will always feel a little unbalanced. If we start from this point, is there hope?" Yi was a little surprised when he heard this. In fact, he has been in contact with Weiwu for so long that he can be said to be very clear about who she is, because they are both platform agents. Weiwu's attitude is relatively positive when communicating with him. She basically treats him as a person of the same level. But when the topic involves other people, her high-handed temperament can't be hidden at all. Before, when the orcs in the coalition were mentioned, Weiwu was disgusted and contemptuous. Obviously, she is deeply influenced by the bloodline theory in their world. After all, she herself is a beneficiary. In the magic world, she belongs to a small group of people with noble blood. This is normal. If you really want to oppose the bloodline theory, you are sick. In fact, Suyi had this idea when he heard about the situation in Mengchuan City at the beginning, but he felt that with this woman's arrogance, she might not be able to lower herself and take the initiative to join forces with those races that she looked down on. Unexpectedly, Weiwu's mind turned around. In this case, isn't this matter too simple? Chapter 185. After knowing the specific situation of the magical world, as well as the general composition of the coalition forces inside Mengchuan City and the city outside, it can be said that as a Kaioshu native, it is difficult not to think of some strategies left behind by our ancestors. What about countermeasures? And what about divide and rule? There are simply too many ways. Before, he just thought that Weiwu probably wouldn't do this, and didn't bother to say anything. Now that she has taken the initiative to bring it up, Suyi has done too many tricks here. It's not only very promising, it's simply too promising. Suyi suddenly became energetic and asked, "Think about it. What is the purpose of those coalition forces attacking Mengchuan City and going south? The Blazing Sun Empire is rich. At first, they probably just wanted to go south to fight the autumn wind. As usual, they took advantage of the chaos within the empire to plunder and then left. But it is different now. Something happened to the elves, and the environment in the north changed drastically." Weiwu calmly replied, "Although the far north of the mainland outside Mengchuan City was also bitter and cold before, the elf kingdom relied on the presence of the spring of life to open up a resource-rich paradise in the bitter cold land. This area is nourished by the spring of life. although it is monopolized by the elves. Races such as orcs and dwarves can also benefit a lot and gradually grow stronger. Now that the fountain of life is damaged, the elves cannot protect themselves, let alone these races. If they just want to go south to plunder at first, their fighting will is not that strong. As long as the resistance is strong enough, they will realize that they are chewing on mention. If the city is not that easy, they should retreat. But it's different now. Whether they can go south is related to the survival of their ethnic group. The spring of life has withered, and the food production in the north may be greatly reduced this year. The harvested food cannot feed so many people, and there are still 3 months at most. The biting cold wind will bring the coldness of the Arctic ice sheet to the north. Without the protection brought by the changing environment of the fountain of life, most of them would not be able to withstand the biting cold wind. If they cannot capture Menchuan City before this and move south, what awaits them is death from hunger and cold. The current purpose of the coalition forces can be said to be very clear. Fighting for plunder and fighting for survival are obviously not on the same level point. If we don't go south, we'll die, and we can't fight this battle unless we fight tooth and nail. How many people are there in total from those races north of Menchuan City? Suyi asked again. The Elf Kingdom occupies the most fertile and prosperous area nourished by the Fountain of Life, but it is more difficult to reproduce than other races, so the population should be about 100 million. On the contrary, there are many other races, and the orcs have tenacious vitality, and there are several. The reproductive capacity of this branch is even more top-notch, and the number of dwarves, goblins, and the like is probably at least 5 to 6 billion. In addition, there are some miscellaneous small races, and the total number of people must be hundreds of millions. North of Menchuan City is an extremely vast land. Even without the Fountain of Life, the output of this land is completely enough for hundreds of millions of people to live and work in peace and contentment. With the blessing of the Fountain of Life, countless people have passed through it. It took tens of thousands of years of development to achieve the current population size. As the Lord of Menchuan City, Wei Wei has been stationed on the front line of the northern frontier of the Blazing Sun Empire for a long time, so she naturally knows this information very well. In other words, if you want to block this hole, you will face up to 2 billion enemies? Suyi was shocked. Wei Wei had said before that there were many living beings in the bitter cold land of the north, but he had not yet realized the seriousness of the matter. Now it seems that this is not just many, it is simply a huge number. However, compared to the tens of billions of people in the Blazing Sun Empire mentioned by Wei Wei before, this does not seem to be a very large number. It can only be said that in a world blessed by magic, the crop yield is not comparable to that of ancient Kyushu, and the population density is naturally incomparable. Not that many. The northern territory is very large, and there are many openings for them to go south. The Menchuan City, where I'm stationed, is just the only entrance for them to go south to the Blazing Sun Empire. Wei Wei explained. There is an east-west mountain range in the north, stretching for tens of thousands of kilometers, which directly isolates the north from the south. It also blocks the cold wind in the north. This causes the wind to be sunny to the south of the mountain and the cold wind to the north of the mountain. A situation unsuitable for living things. There are a total of 6 openings in this mountain range to go south, and Menchuan City is just one of them. Menchuan City is on the east side of the mainland, and there is the Huangsha Empire to the west. There are 2 openings for these northern races to go south, but Huangsha the empire is full of yellow sand and is very barren, and even if they successfully attack these people, they will not be able to survive. And further to the west, there is another Frost Empire, and the remaining 3 openings are all within the territory of the Frost Empire. However, the strength of the Frost Empire is one of the best on the mainland, and it is extremely strong. The most important thing is that, whether it is the Yellow Sand Empire or the Frost Empire, they are relatively stable internally. If such a big thing happens on the northern border, they will definitely increase their troops to defend it. Only our Blazing Sun Empire is in chaos internally. I just got news a few days ago that, although no one from the Imperial capital has taken the initiative to attack the Imperial capital, there is already a war outside the city. They want to go south. The best place is Menchuan City, and the Blazing Sun Empire is rich enough. As long as they break in, they can survive. So, Even if it won't withstand the attacks of all the races in the north, Mengchuan City will still bear the greatest pressure. The million-strong army is just an appetizer. The real storm is still brewing. What Anki said is right, by the way, Anki is the new elf princess. I captured her. Do you want her? If you do, I'll make you a slave. Although the situation is serious, Weiwu's tone seems relatively relaxed. As they were talking about business, Suyi naturally ignored her next sentence and asked back, 2 billion aliens, if they don't go south, they will die. It's not difficult to raise an army of hundreds of millions of people, right? Even if the other few ports give you troops, with your Mengchuan City being a soft persimmon, the enemies you have to face must be hundreds of millions. Suyi sighed. Do you think Mengchuan City can resist it? Of course not. Otherwise why would I come to you? Wei rolled her eyes at him and said, and your estimate of facing hundreds of millions of enemies is still too conservative. For these northern races, many of them are born stronger than humans. Regardless of gender, age or young, they are excellent warriors when they pick up weapons, especially those orcs, who have the largest population. So the real enemies to face at that time are far more than these. The reinforcement from Jiazhou can only alleviate the urgent need of the previous million-strong army besieging the city point. Facing this overwhelming alien race, even if the firepower is doubled, it is impossible to defend point unless you go directly to the big mushroom point. But things obviously haven't reached that point yet. Weiwei has already said a better way to deal with it. Chapter 186. The coalition forces are not monolithic, and it is not an exaggeration to say that they are a patchwork of sand. The internal situation is to say that everyone has their own agenda, which is to flatter them. It is a group that has to stick together in order to survive. And there is a serious chain of discrimination internally. As long as we start from this point, it is not difficult to disintegrate the coalition forces, of course. This is only theoretical. When it comes to actual operation, detailed planning is still required. So, what do you mean by coming to me? Suyi probably guessed what Weiwei meant. I want to cooperate with a race in the coalition. Weiwei said frankly. The opening in the eastern part of the mountain range, where Mengchuan City is located, is usually called the Sunrise Canyon. It is a huge channel that runs north to south, is more than 1,000 kilometers long, and is hundreds of kilometers wide at its widest point, almost like a basin. The canyon is winding and rugged, and the surrounding mountains can withstand most of the severe cold from the far north. Although it is also cold in winter, it is not like in the north, where without the protection of the Spring of Life basin, you will freeze to death. Cooperate with one of the races and let them station themselves in the canyon to escape the coming severe winter. The condition is that they need to defend Mengchuan City from the coalition's attack. I think it is feasible. Yi suddenly understood after hearing this. Although the canyon is large and can accommodate hundreds of millions of people, the products inside are not rich enough. In addition, the food production in the north has decreased this year. Therefore, even if these people try to escape the biting cold wind in the canyon, they do not have enough food supplies to survive. Is it right to spend the winter? Yes. Weiwei took a deep breath. This is why I came to discuss with you. If this plan is implemented, I need food. At least enough food for hundreds of millions of people to survive the winter. Of course, this is too much. It's normal that you can't provide it. Don't be embarrassed. At worst, find another way. I wonder if you can provide me with some of the weapons you mentioned before. Nuclear weapons? Suyi was non-committal and just reminded lightly. When they attack Mengchuan City, there will be so many people crowded in a canyon. If this thing is thrown away, hundreds of millions of casualties will easily occur. Are you sure you want to use it? Weiwei chuckled and said, don't you understand yet? Even the fertile Blazing Sun Empire cannot afford to support so many people in the north. The coalition I mentioned earlier is just a delaying tactic to defend Mengchuan City, and it cannot completely solve this problem. Something, on the contrary, use your super weapons now. While these people are preparing to attack Mengchuan City and gather in the canyon, just kill them all. This is the real way to solve the problem. This is a very cruel but realistic thing. The magical world is not a new civilization. The population carrying capacity of their world has long reached its upper limit, and this upper limit includes the effect of the special item called the Fountain of Life point. If we compare it to Blue Star, it is almost as if one day suddenly, the hybrid rice technology that has fed countless people suddenly disappeared, and it is very likely that it will never appear again in the future point. The resulting gap is destined to cause the entire world's population to far exceed the upper limit that output resources can carry. Famine and disaster would spread quickly throughout the world. The situation after the magical world loses the Fountain of Life is similar to this. The difference is that, if Blue Star loses a certain high yield crop and causes a large scale reduction in world food production, it will spread all over the world and become a problem for everyone in the world. But it's different in the magical world. The problem is only in the north. In other words, the redundant people are all concentrated in one place. The most direct way to solve this disaster is to deal with these people. There are many solutions. Blocking the entrance to the south and letting these people die in the cold wind is the easiest way. Once they are allowed to break through the defense line and go south, the war will take away the redundant population that the world cannot support. At this time, it will not only be the aliens in the north who will be taken away, but also the Blazing Sun Empire, or other people of several countries. No matter how you say it, it is extremely cruel. Without the Fountain of Life, the wizarding world will almost certainly see a mass extinction of more than a billion people. Is the Fountain of Life really irreparable? Suyi asked after a moment of silence. If it can be repaired, these elves will not directly send troops. They have difficulty reproducing, and usually don't like war. Wee shook her head. Even if Yuling is still here, I'm afraid it can't be repaired. Because I can clearly feel that the elves have completely given up on searching for Yuling. I'm afraid that the damage to the Fountain of Life is not just a matter of missing a core. Where are your gods? Suyi asked subconsciously, but as soon as he said the words, he almost couldn't hold back. At this time, he actually pulled out this trick of asking ghosts and gods without asking the common people. If the gods of the magical world were really in charge, they would not let a civilization that has existed for hundreds of thousands of years remain in this state. As expected, we were immediately sneered. The most recent birth of a god was a Dharma god who appeared in the Frost Empire more than 40,000 years ago. Who knows whether these so-called immortal gods are dead or alive now? Then this greater disaster has appeared many times in the magical world, but they have never appeared before. Gods don't care about the life and death of mortals, so now the multiple choice question is placed in front of Suyi. Follow the first method, take it one step at a time, and defend Mengchuan City first. Or just avoid future troubles and shoot a few big mushrooms to solve all problems. This multiple choice question is really difficult. It can be said that the lives of more than 1 billion people depend on his thoughts. Wait a minute. Suyi struggled for a long time and was suddenly stunned. He's not from the magical world, so why would he give me multiple choice questions? He immediately looked at Wu Wei and said, I can provide food or weapons. It's your choice. Blue Star's food should be enough to withstand this wave. Moreover, there is not enough food here in Blue Star, so he can also go to his good friend Bailu to buy it. It's too difficult for her to rob a starship or something like that. Isn't it just a waste of time to rob a granary? Since everyone is an interstellar civilization, there will definitely be no shortage of food. As for weapons, it is very difficult to make all the nuclear weapons of Blue Star disappear. It should be no problem to give yourself a few rounds. There is no shortage of people in this world who are greedy for money and afraid of death. Sure enough, seeing Suyi throw the question back, Weewa's slender red lips moved, and finally she sighed and said with some frustration, never mind that, just give me food first. Chapter 187. Sure enough, although this woman seemed to be ruthless when killing the enemy, she was still soft-hearted. I couldn't be so cruel as to bury more than 1 billion people in the north outside Mengchuan City. Suyi laughed in his heart and was about to say that if she didn't have anything good to trade this time, he could temporarily owe her and pay her back when he got something good in the future. But before he could say anything, he saw Wee Wee take out a long bow and slap it on the table. This is the magic bow my father gave me when I was an adult. It is a weapon used by a demigod. It is inlaid with a high-level magic core as an energy source. Before the energy in the magic core dries up, Even ordinary people can use it. Even if there is no magic core, it can be used in the hands of magician or warrior above the 7th level. It has many functions. The most basic one is of course to shoot magic arrows. No arrows are needed. You can shoot by pulling the bow. In addition, it is extremely tough. The blades with magic array patterns engraved on both ends can also be used as a very powerful melee weapon. Even if you don't look at its function as a weapon, it can also serve as a piece of armor. After all, archers are the body is generally weak, so when the demigod level existence designed this bow, it was designed in advance to save itself once it was approached. It is only one of the melee weapons that it becomes. Once it senses that the user is in danger, the defense array pattern in the longbow will be activated, and you will be covered with a layer of magic shield, which can resist the attack of the 9th level warrior or magician. How many times it can be blocked depends on how much energy the magic core on it has. And there is also a berserker array pattern on it, which can give the user extremely powerful physical strength comparable to that of a 9th level warrior in a short period of time, allowing you to fight head on with people who rush into your face. Use it to exchange your food. Is it enough? So, Yi picked up this extremely gorgeous longbow and swallowed his saliva. Just the functions that we said are already a bit too awesome. Almost an ordinary person can have the strength to kill a 9th level strongman by picking up this thing. This artifact is really awesome. By the way, it can also be enlarged and reduced according to your preferences. When it is inconvenient to carry weapons, it is also very good to shrink it into a small pendant and hang it on your body. Although you cannot shoot arrows to attack others in this situation, the defensive array pattern on it can be activated at any time, and it can be used as a magic prop for self-defense. Wee stretched out her hand and tapped twice on a place on the longbow. The longbow that was almost as tall as Suyi just now suddenly turned into a miniature handmade figure of only 4 or 5 centimeters. It is completely no problem to tie it with a rope and hang it around your neck. Suyi took this little thing in his hand and looked at it for a while, and then controlled it to change to a normal form according to Wee's guidance. Waved it in his hand and shot an arrow. Then he said decisively, "Deal." Originally, the transaction involved this time was so big that he thought Wei would not be able to exchange anything good because she was trapped in Mengchuan City, so he planned to let her owe it first and talk about it later. As a result, she really deserved to be an old noble of Zhengqiang banner, and she took out such a good treasure. It will point the cold winter in the north of the magic world lasts for more than 5 months. If we feed 1 billion people and each person consumes 1 kilogram of food every day, Suyi needs to prepare at least 150 million tons of food for Weni. This is undoubtedly an astronomical figure. If measured in Jiao's currency, the price of these grains is at least more than 300 billion. For the current Xianyu group, it is a huge sum of money. It cannot be taken out in a short time and can only be purchased in batches. And can this bow have such a high value? In fact, it is hard to say. These are completely products of 2 different systems, and the standards for measuring value are also different. As a semi-artifact, this bow is absolutely priceless in the magic world. But hundreds of millions of tons of food in a feudal society, it is also impossible for anyone to take it out. The value between the two is really difficult to compare. Therefore, this transaction actually depends on whether Suyi can take a fancy to it. Coincidentally, he likes this bow very much. If he likes it, he will buy it. As for its value, it is not important. Moreover, this bow is not only good for showing off, but also can save your life. If you encounter any emergency, you can have a lot of money, but you only have 1 life. This is more valuable to Suyi than its main attack attribute. When do you plan to go back and split the coalition forces and contact one of the races for cooperation? It has been so many days since the last great victory. I'm afraid that Mengchuan City will not be safe for long, right? Suyi asked while admiring the big toy he had just got. I will contact you as soon as I go back today. Wee said decisively. After the transaction with you before, there are still millions of tons of stored grain in Mengchuan City. I plan to take out a part of it as a sincerity and cooperate with a certain race. Have you thought about which one? Orcs. So, Yi was stunned for a moment and looked at Wee Wee with some surprise. He originally thought that Wee Wee wanted to win over the elves. After all, the elves were strong enough and belonged to the level of the overlord of the northern border. As for the orcs, Wee Wee had complained about those messy races here many times before, and orcs were the ones she complained about the most. They are born with bodies that are much stronger than humans. And even many of their branches only need to grow to adulthood to be comparable to the strength of low-level human warriors, but the combat effectiveness of this race is very average. When the population is much larger than that of the elves, they can only serve as dogs for the elves in a war like this. You are completely cannon fodder. And if he remembered correctly, the orcs should be the most populous race in the north, right? Instead of choosing the most powerful elves with a relatively small population to cooperate, they chose orcs instead. What kind of brain circuit is this? There are many reasons, but the main reason is that I recently discovered that orcs should be the easiest to control. We obviously guessed in advance that Suyui would be surprised and explained calmly, orcs is just a general term. There are many internal branches, and there is even a relationship between predators and prey between different branches. I say that we must cooperate with orcs, but it does not mean that we must cooperate with all orcs. My current goal is to first bring the cattle, horse, and goat races, which have the largest number of orcs, but the lowest status among the orcs, under my command. These orcs are mainly vegetarians and only need me to provide them with the most basic food. Food is enough for them to survive. Compared to tigers and werewolves who have to eat meat, they are much easier to feed. Chapter 188. Of course, the most important reason is that these vegetarian orcs are generally stupid, but they are strong enough and there are many in number. It is roughly estimated that there are 3 to 4 billion. They account for more than half of the large race of orcs. Even if they can only find one warrior out of 100 who dares to fight, they can still pull out an army of millions of people. The remaining people can also help with some menial work, such as building walls and fortifications. As long as we conquer this group, defending Mengchuan City will not be a problem at all. Wee's words were quite firm, and Suyui said thoughtfully when he heard the words, "Do you want to build an army of millions of orcs? I'm afraid it's not just to defend Mengchuan City, right?" Of course. Wee smiled and said, "It's impossible that my brothers don't know about the situation in the north, but they still ignore it and leave the mess in the north to me alone. When the crisis in Mengchuan City is resolved, I will take my army south and go to the imperial capital in person to ask them which one is more important, the tens of billions of people in the Blazing Sun Empire or the throne. If you can't answer, then go and bury your father. Good guy. What a crime." You also want to hold up the knife and go to Luo Tong to explain the pros and cons, right? Suyui didn't even expect that this woman had already planned how to go south to seize the throne after defending Mengchuan City. Moreover, the resentment in Wee's words almost overflowed, like the evil ghost who had returned to his soul for the first 7 times. Just think about it. A girl's family was thrown to the north to become a local emperor, and the result was such a mess. Obviously, the Qiang Empire has a great cause. As long as they pay a little attention to this area, they can easily solve the problems in the north with the help of Mengchuan City's geographical location. As a result, everyone ignored her. It would be impossible without resentment. Aren't you worried about backlash? This is a foreign race after all, and it may not be as easy to control as you think. Suyui reminded, and don't forget, people are discriminated against by elves and more advanced orcs in the north. But they may not be discriminated against when they come here. According to what you said before, the humans in your world are probably more discriminatory towards these half-human half-animal guys, right? How do you plan to let the people under your command get along with these orcs that you have subjugated? If you don't handle it well, they can betray the high-level orcs and elves who discriminate against them. Of course, they can also betray the humans who discriminate against them. It was useless for Wee to calm down on her own. Even if she had absolute authority in Mengchuan City, it would be useless to order her soldiers to coexist peacefully with these orcs. In the history of Blue Star, many Western countries used black people to serve in the army. However, discrimination against these black people still exists to this day. Not to mention the Wizarding World. The difference between the orcs and normal people over there is not just skin color, the real races are all different. Moreover, blood is still the most important thing there. These orcs are usually regarded as mixed blood mongrels, with extremely low social status in this social atmosphere. Eliminating discrimination is not something she can solve with just a few orders. Suyi could almost imagine that under Weiwu's order, everyone maintained harmony on the surface, but privately the people in Mengchuan City did not regard the orcs as human beings at all. However, faced with this problem, Weiwu acted very relaxed. After standing up and stretching, showing off her well-endowed figure without any reservation, she said nonchalantly, "It's very simple. I had no intention of letting those orcs come into contact with the aborigines of Mengchuan City from the beginning." "Then, how do you control them?" Suyi asked doubtfully. "Those who pass you." Weiwu's fiery red eyes blinked at Suyi and said slyly, "You didn't expect that, did you?" "Ah, people." Suyi was stunned for a moment, but then he guessed who she was referring to. "You mean the 10,000 reinforcement I sent over?" "Certainly." Weiwu smiled and told him about the relationship between the Kaishu warriors and the Minotauran horseheads in the coalition camp, as well as the current attitude of the orcs towards those Kaishu warriors, and finally said, "If I hadn't discovered this situation, I wouldn't have thought about cooperating with those of other races, because the discrimination problem you mentioned is unsolvable. In this case, it is almost impossible to guarantee the loyalty of these orcs. Even if I successfully win over them, they are just doing it for stuttering. It's okay to hold on to Mengchuan City for the time being, but in the future, if I want to use their power to help me go south to the imperial capital, that will definitely not work. People come here for a bite to eat. After seeing the wealth and prosperity within the empire, they will naturally leave in search of more food." After hearing this, Suyi couldn't help but admire that this woman's brain was really good. He also observed things carefully enough to be keenly aware of the changes that occurred in the low-level orcs after getting along with the Kaishu warriors, and based on this, he derived a plan to divide the coalition forces outside the city and take advantage of them. It's hard to say that the person's high status in the magical world can only be attributed to his noble bloodline. He also has something. But how do you plan to implement these plans specifically? The reinforcement we sent are only 10,000 in total. I'm afraid it will be difficult to help you control so many orcs, right? And let them directly contact these orcs. If an accident occurs, you are ready to deal with it. Is there any way? I did prepare some plans," Weiwu explained. "First of all, after the victory of the last bombardment, I have asked a large number of craftsmen and magicians to lead workers to build a new city defense facility at a canyon pass nearly 100 kilometers north of Mengchuan City. This facility was originally mine. It was intended to be used as the new defense line of Mengchuan City, but now it seems that it has other uses. The canyon area between the pass defense line and Mengchuan City is relatively wide. The widest part reaches more than 70 kilometers. It is not an exaggeration to say it is a small plain. There are many rivers flowing out of the mountains. In the end, these rivers they will all converge into one of the two large rivers surrounding Mengchuan City. This area is enough to provide temporary shelter for hundreds of millions of people. I plan to take my trusted knights with me in the initial negotiations and show my sincerity from the beginning. After the negotiation is successful, I will open the pass and allow these orcs to enter this canyon plain and temporarily settle down. At this point, those orcs will naturally help us defend the city. With the help of such a large number of orcs, plus the upper pass is easy to defend and difficult to attack. It can be said that the defense of Mengchuan City is already impregnable. It will be very difficult for the coalition forces to defeat it." Chapter 189. When the pass defense line is stable, because the pass defense line extends forward, it is necessary to move the artillery positions. At that time, I will have the Kaishu reinforcement stationed outside Mengchuan City. Of course, this is when the pass defense line is strong enough and the coalition forces will be able to move in a short time. Under the premise that it cannot be broken inside, those Kaishu reinforcement who have moved their positions outside the city will naturally have more contact with the orcs. By then, the pressure on the city defense will not be so great. I will equip every soldier in the reinforcement who is in the camp outside the city with the warriors from Mengchuan City will accompany you to protect you from any accidents during the contact. Over time, the plain between the pass and Mengchuan City will gradually develop into an orc city, blocking the front of Mengchuan City, and the people who have the most contact with those orcs will only be the Kaishu reinforcement stationed outside Mengchuan City, not the local soldiers and civilians of Mengchuan City. I will give strict orders to the Mengchuan City soldiers stationed at the pass ahead. They are absolutely not allowed to leave and run around when they are stationed at the pass. They also need to return to Mengchuan City when changing defenses. Of course, this kind of artificial isolation cannot be accelerated. Mutual recognition and integration between the two parties will lead to conflicts, so the ban will not be too strict, but I will issue another strict order prohibiting human soldiers from discriminating against orcs. In this way, as long as a few people are punished for killing chickens and monkeys, no one will take the risk of violating the law. Going in front of those orcs to do another thing that violates the law. Let both parties be willing to have as little contact as possible, and let the orcs' impression of the humans in Mengchuan City stay on those Kaishu soldiers as much as possible. To this end, I will also buy a batch of world language pass cards and train a group of people who are familiar with Kaishu dialect. Then let them teach a group of Mengchuan City soldiers how to communicate basically in Kaishu dialect, and let these soldiers serve as translators, and security guards are assigned to Kaishu warriors as followers. Of course, there are also some localization methods that are in line with the characteristics of our world. For example, Suyi asked curiously, for example, these 10,000 Kaishu warriors defeated 1,000,000 coalition forces and defended Mengchuan City. Their hard work and merit are great. I will confer honors and titles on them as the eldest princess of the empire. I guarantee that these 10,000 people will also have knighthoods for the first time. We said calmly, if they have a title, some low and middle level warriors are willing to serve as knights for them. Warriors of the 4th level and above are usually called knights, but this is different from knights, who actually have imperial honors. The former is a recognition of your strength, and the latter is a real social status. Most of the 4th and 5th level warriors born as civilians do not have knighthoods. This means that, although they have some strength, they are still civilians, not nobles. If you want to have the title of knight, the easiest way is to start as an official knight's squire. This is true regardless of your strength. In our world, there are many positions like knight squire, which sounds inferior to others. No one can ask for it, and there are some 4th and 5th level warriors among them. Suyi listened for a long time, and finally understood point Weiwu's logic was probably that in the name of repelling 1,000,000 strong army, she would grant these tens of thousands of Jiao reinforcement a noble title from the Qiang Empire point. After having such a high social status, some local warriors in the magic world are willing to help them. After simple instruction, these people can not only act as translators, but also protect the safety of those Kaishu warriors, and because of the extremely strict hierarchy in the magical world in the default rules in society, these attendants would never dare to disobey the master knight to whom they are loyal. Point naturally, it is impossible for people in Kaishu not to discriminate against orcs, but these attendants do. Point over time, these people will naturally be subtly influenced, and Mengchuan City will naturally have a group of people who don't have such strong racial concepts. This move is equivalent to taking the 10,000 reinforcement from Kaishu as the center, and spreading their behavior and thinking. Point as the saying goes, if something is good from above, it will be followed by others below. Point the status of these 10,000 people is high enough to truly affect the magical world. No, it is still a bit early to say that the entire world point, but at least it has no problem affecting the social atmosphere of Mengchuan City. Point this will not only ensure the safety of these Kaishu reinforcement, but also leave an excellent impression on the surrendered orcs, allowing them to gain respect that they will never get elsewhere. Even if absolute loyalty cannot be guaranteed, it will increase their risk of betrayal cost. Point at the same time, it can also subtly influence a group of middle and low level warriors, allowing them to change the inherent thinking in their brains, and these middle and low level warriors are undoubtedly in the middle level among the ordinary people in the magic world, and their thinking will affect more people. Point as long as we uses this method long enough, this kind of thinking will gradually become a trend in the magical world. Suyi suddenly thought of a very serious problem point. In fact, this may not be a good thing for Wee and the imperial nobles, because various races in the magical world discriminate against each other, and chains of contempt are formed within the races, based on different bloodlines. The root of all this lies in the deep-rooted blood theory in the magical world point. If this kind of thinking becomes a trend, it will be subversive to the social order of the entire magical world point. To put it bluntly, the Blazing Sun Empire in Wee's mouth can be passed down for hundreds of thousands of years, only because of its awesome bloodline theory point. Without this thing, next time someone comes and calls out Prince General Xiangning point, maybe these old empires that have been passed down through blood for countless years will collapse in an instant point. He glanced at Wee and opened his mouth, not knowing whether to speak or not point, but Wee seemed to have thought of this situation a long time ago. As soon as she saw Suyi's expression, she guessed what he wanted to say and answered first. This kind of change in thinking that affects the whole world is not something that can be achieved overnight, or even 10 or dozens of years. It will take hundreds of years to change. By that time, if I had not reached the level of a demigod, I would have died long ago. After I die, I will not care about the floods. Let the country perish. It's none of my business. And compared to the current world, that is like a stagnant pool of water. Introducing some new things to make the world more exciting may not be a bad thing. I didn't expect you to have such ideological awareness. Great. Suyi couldn't help but give her a thumbs up point. However, Wee smiled and said, actually, that was something I had thought about in advance, and I will tell others about it when I'm about to die. As for now, if I really have no other choice, I will not do such a thing to dig my own grave. My brothers and those foreign races in the north, since they don't want me to have an easy life, then let's just say goodbye. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190. With the support from Suyi, Wee immediately started sending people to secretly contact the orcs. As soon as she returned to Mengchuan City point, there is no need to wait until Suyi has prepared all the food. Before starting point, Mengchuan City itself still has millions of tons of food, so it is entirely possible to use some of it first to show sincerity point. After all, even if all the food arrived, she would not be able to give all the hundreds of millions of tons to the orcs at once. She would definitely have to give it in batches. There's no need to wait until everything is ready. Moreover, many days have passed since the last great victory. According to the news from the scouts sent to the north, all the tribes in the north have learned about the situation in the Fountain of Life and are currently gathering on a large scale to prepare to go south again. The dozens of tribal coalition forces closest to Mengchuan City have already assembled and are just waiting for an order. If we wait any longer, when the army presses on the border and those races come to attack under the leadership of the elves, it may not be so easy to instigate some of them to rebel. Even if they instigate rebellion, there probably won't be many orcs among the rebels who can come to Mengchuan City alive. This is definitely not in line with Wee's original plan. Therefore, she needs to complete the work of instigating rebellion before the northern border is completely assembled, so that some orcs who are willing to surrender can enter the pass in front of Mengchuan City and become a barrier for Mengchuan City. Suyi has not been idle. Since returning to Blue Star, he contacted Old Man Lin immediately and talked about the things Wee mentioned. Not only the food part, but also the ideas Wee mentioned this time, as well as the internal situation of the Blazing Sun Empire. These are real old foxes who know much more than him and Wee in this regard. It's normal to ask others for advice. The senior officials of Kaishu had a certain understanding of Wee, a princess from another world, and the existence of the Blazing Sun Empire. This time, after hearing Suyi talk about the situation there, their understanding became a little deeper. About a day after Suyi contacted Old Man Lin, another news finally came from Old Man Lin. As soon as he opened his mouth, he said something Suyi didn't expect. To what extent can you connect with that other world? Apart from restrictions on sending people there, can any items be exchanged freely? So, Yi didn't know why he suddenly asked this, so he thought about it and said, there are certain restrictions, but it can also be seen as any supplies can come and go at will. If that's the case, Old Man Lin pondered for a moment and then said, based on the information you provided, we discussed it and concluded that this battle does not necessarily need to be fought to such an extent that most of the alien races will be completely exterminated, and if the princess from another world wants to change the social laws of their world, this is not only not a crisis, but an opportunity. How do you say it? Su Yi suddenly became interested. According to your statement, the root cause of this war is that their world lost important means of production, which led to a sharp drop in productivity in an area, which in turn prevented the people living in this area from seeking opportunities to survive. The paradox is that, after losing important means of production, this group of people has theoretically exceeded the upper limit of the world's population under the current productivity. If some people cannot survive, war will naturally break out. But isn't this you? Old Man Lin said in surprise. Have you never thought about introducing Blue Star's production technology to replace their missing production materials and restore balance to the imbalanced environment of productivity and massive population? Of course I have thought about it, Su Yi explained, but I'm afraid it won't happen overnight. They are still in an agricultural society and suddenly have billions of redundant people. I'm afraid it won't be possible to solve these problems just by increasing productivity, right? Even if we transfer more advanced agricultural machinery, fertilizers, and planting technology to them for free, I'm afraid it will be difficult to complete productivity upgrades in a short time. It will take at least several years to see results. How can so many people do this during this period? Feeding? We can't always provide food, right? Blue Star doesn't have so much food. Look, this is a misunderstanding, isn't it? Old Man Lin suddenly said happily. Why don't you say you are still young? In a world that can feed tens of billions of people, do you really think that under such circumstances, you can't even provide enough food to feed these 2 billion people for several years? Even in Blue Star's modern society, food is an important strategic resource, let alone an agricultural society. Under this social form, the middle and upper classes will inevitably hoard large amounts of food to cope with sudden natural disasters, plagues, wars and other unpredictable factors. Their society is like a sponge. The food that can feed these 2 billion people for several years is definitely yes. The question is whether you can squeeze it out, and how to squeeze it out. That may not be easy for you to understand. Let me ask you another question. Do you know why there were all kinds of natural and man-made disasters at the end of the ancient dynasty? So, Yi really hasn't studied this issue, so he can only tentatively say, because the natural disaster itself was the cause of the dynasty's end. Wrong, of course not. Old Man Lin smiled and said, this is the misunderstanding that many people have now. They think that natural disasters will lead to the end of the dynasty. Coupled with man-made disasters, the dynasty will eventually collapse. In fact, this is not the case at all. You have natural disasters, but can it be that there will be no natural disasters in the new dynasty established after your demise? The reason why there are more records of natural disasters and man-made disasters leading to large-scale humanitarian disasters in history books at the end of the dynasty is that many people have reversed the cause and effect relationship here. Natural disasters actually exist in any period, but when the dynasty is prosperous, the central court can effectively coordinate resources and use strong means to relieve disasters. So even if natural disasters occur, they cannot cause too much impact. But at the end of the dynasty, it was not the case. The central court's control over the local areas was greatly reduced, and it was unable to coordinate the forces of all parties for disaster relief. Even the relief materials sent to treat the symptoms, but not the root cause, would be embezzled at all levels, eventually leading to a major disaster. The scope spread completely out of control, and then it was recorded in history books as an unprecedented natural disaster. The closer to the end of the dynasty, the more obvious this situation will be. So when future generations look through history books, they will see that natural disasters are rampant at the end of the dynasty, as if the country is about to perish due to a curse from heaven. In fact, natural disasters are rampant only at the end of the dynasty. I'm not saying this to tell you history, but to say that the aliens in the other world who lost their means of production are the people who encountered natural disasters at the end of the dynasty. Whether this natural disaster will become a large-scale disaster that causes the death of billions of people depends on whether there is anyone who can squeeze water out of the sponge and prolong their lives. Chapter 191. Hearing this, Suyi probably understood point these high-level officials in Kyushu believe that the magical world is capable of feeding the more than 2 billion people in the north within 3 to 5 years. As long as the means of production are replenished and productivity is improved during this period, these people are not necessarily destined to die. The only problem is how to squeeze out the water from those in the magical world who want to sit on the sidelines. This may not be that easy. Not only is it not that easy, it may be much more difficult than imagined. After all, the theory of blood is deeply rooted in this world. Those who can accumulate a large amount of food in their hands, who is not a noble. Normally, these nobles would not even bother to take a look at ordinary humans who are suffering from disasters and starving, let alone the aliens who were even more humble in their eyes. If they were to provide food to feed those alien races, wouldn't that cost them their lives? Don't say that. If you don't produce this food, the aliens will come in and rob your whole family. If they are about to starve to death. The nobles who farm grain do not think of themselves as a whole, but only as an independent individual. At that time, I was thinking, with so many alien races, is it possible that I can feed them just by giving them food? Since I can't feed them, they will still attack me, so why should I give them food? Instead of wasting my efforts, I might as well. Before the aliens come over, I will just take my family property and run away. In this way, my property and life are saved, but my home is gone. What does it matter if I have money and food and start a new place? But since Old Man Lin said so, Suyi felt that he should have a solution, so he immediately asked, so how do you think this sponge should be squeezed? The world does not have only one country, but several large empires juxtaposed with a bunch of small kingdoms and a large number of aliens. Currently, we are only cooperating with an imperial princess, and the fiefdom only has one border city. Yes, it is absolutely impossible to use administrative means to accomplish what you said by squeezing resources to coordinate disaster relief. It's basically impossible to use force, and since we already have such force, why don't we just repel the invading alien races? Why should we make enemies of the whole world? Administrative means and physical means will not work. Of course we know it. Old Man Lin came prepared and said calmly, so we can complete coordination through trade. Your large-scale transactions with other worlds have always been limited to food. To be honest, it's a bit too wasteful. The other world is not just a magical world with some supernatural powers. It is also a huge market with a population of tens of billions. Even though it was extremely backward under the feudal system, most people were extremely poor and had little spending power. But it has enough spending power. The number of nobles is at least hundreds of millions. In this kind of market, if we don't do any big business with them, but just trade some knowledge and small items, wouldn't that be a waste of natural resources? An idea flashed in Suyi's mind, and he immediately understood what Old Man Lin was going to say. You mean to export Blue Star's products to other worlds, use the profits earned from these products to coordinate resources, and then use the resources within their world to feed more than 2 billion people in a short period of time? That's right. Old Man Lin confirmed. After our discussion, this is the best way at the moment. Then the problem comes again. Suyi asked with a strange expression. Why should I save those people? Confused. Old Lin said with a headache and heartache. That's a total of 2 billion people. That little girl called the princess can think of dividing the alien races, collecting one for her own use, and then using the power of these alien races to fight for the throne. What if all these 2 billion people were recruited? Question mark. What if we use a more modern approach to establish an effective management method? The power that this group of people can unleash is absolutely unimaginable to you. Let alone fighting for the throne of the Blazing Sun Empire. It may not be impossible to compete in the world. After all, you have said before that there is some kind of magic teleportation array in their world. Being able to carry out large-scale transfers of people and materials over long distances. Unlike ancient Kyushu, transportation has never been a factor limiting territory expansion. Theoretically, it is completely possible to unify the world. If our ally is the master of a world, then the things that can be traded with us will obviously be more abundant than now. I have to say that Sui couldn't help but feel a little moved by his words. The main thing is that this is not nonsense, but a very feasible solution considering all aspects. The current situation faced by these 2 billion aliens is to either die or to conquer these easy to defend and difficult to attack passes and move south on a large scale, triggering a larger scale war and causing more killings, fighting for their own survival territory. But now, according to Old Man Lin, it is undoubtedly a new choice for these foreign races, a choice that allows one to survive without having to kill so many people or fighting life and death. The price of this choice is actually very simple for them: accepting the transformation of Mengcho and City. A complete transformation starting from their internal social makeup, changing their thinking, changing their internal structure, based on blood theory. Let this alien race become a weapon that we can use at will. Compared to dying of hunger and cold in the cold wind and being wounded to death under the deep ditch and high fortress of Mengcho and City. This seemingly difficult thing may not necessarily be difficult to do. In the face of survival, nothing cannot be compromised. Once successful, we will have the power to change the world. As for whether she, as a noble of the Blazing Sun Empire's royal family, is willing to change by then, it actually doesn't matter anymore. The lifeblood of food is in Suyi's hands. Most of the billions of alien races in the lower class, which are the largest in number, are at the lower end of the contempt chain. They have the subjective initiative to break the lineage theory in the magical world, plus the results of their incorporation and transformation. By then, Suyi might really be able to control the war and future direction of another world from across one world. Hiss. This feeling is really exciting when I think about it, but your current strategy is correct. You can just do it for the time being. There is no need to change it in a hurry. Old Man Lin waited for a while and finally continued. Incorporating and dividing some alien races is absolutely correct. If you want people to return to their homes, you must first set an example to make them believe in you. You don't need to rush to tell her to change her strategy. You only need to let her try to contact and integrate the alien races. At the same time, do some research on the market in the other world to see what is easier to sell. We will also be prepared here. When the production capacity explodes, the storage will squeeze out not a drop of water from the sponge of the other world. Chapter 192. Of course, the most important thing right now is food. We must first survive this severe winter. The 150 million tons of food you mentioned before to feed a billion people for at least 5 months seems to be obviously not enough now. This number must be at least doubled, and more than 300 million tons of grain must be prepared. And this is just the beginning. More grain supplies will be needed in the future. Speaking of this, Old Man Lin pondered for a moment and then continued. We also understand the purpose of why you came to us. We old guys discussed it. Although there are hundreds of millions of tons of grain reserves in Jiuzhou, it is certainly impossible to give them all to you. The first thing we have to consider is what happens in the country. Issues in response to natural and man-made disasters. After contacting the Grain Reserve Department, we came to the conclusion that the grain that can be given to you is about 30 million tons. We need to ensure that no matter what happens, Kyushu will have enough grain reserves to ensure that the people will not go hungry again. Talk about other things. So this is the limit, but in addition to these normal grains, Jiuzhou can also get some from the livestock feed reserves, which is about 20 million tons. Don't think it's bad just because it's feed. In fact, a lot of it is corn and soybean meal, which people can eat. In the past, when there was a famine, there wasn't enough food. If you wanted to, it's only now that life has improved that we use these things. Feeding livestock. What's more, didn't you say that the alien orcs in the other world have many beast-like characteristics? So they may not be able to use the feed they feed to satisfy their hunger. In short, these are the limits of what we can provide. It's up to you whether you can use it. If the livestock feed cannot be used, then we can only provide 30 million tons of normal grain. So, Yi twitched the corners of his mouth when he heard this. 30 million tons. Then you still suggest that I recruit all those 2 billion people. That's 300 million tons. The food you can provide is only 1/10. It's a good idea, but it's useless without food. You can't say that. After hearing this, Old Man Lin suddenly changed the subject and said, if I have to say it, it's not that Kyushu can't produce so much food. It's just that first we have to consider the ability of the people of Kyushu to withstand risks. So we can't give it to you. But outside of Kyushu, in agricultural countries with entire plains that produce grain, they may not care about the death of their own residents. Ahem. Good guy. Suyi suddenly smiled and said, what you mean is that you can't give me much food, but I can go to other places in the world to purchase it, right? Then you are not worried that I will buy too much food and cause famine in Blue Star. In principle, we don't support you purchasing food from Blue Star to sell to other worlds. After all, there are still many people in Blue Star who don't have enough to eat, and famine is not a rare thing on Blue Star. Old Man Lin said, quite bachelor, but apart from the principle, you are not in a superior subordinate relationship with us, so we can't control you. What's more, if you buy grain from those grain merchants, it is a normal transaction. Who can control you? Good guy, are you waiting for me here? Suyi immediately knew what he meant. How can the 4 major grain merchants of ABCD be so easy to deal with? It may not be that easy to ask them to take out the grain obediently, right? Of course it's not that easy for others. Is there anything else in this world that's not easy for you? Old Man Lin said with a smile. If you want to buy it, will they dare not sell it to you? Or will they raise the price? TSK, let me do the math. Suyi clapped his fingers and said, first I offended the medical industry by selling water of life, then I offended the semiconductor industry by selling carbon-based wafers, then I offended the military industry by selling exoskeleton armor, and I offended almost the entire Penglay Island issue. Western official sector including Bald Eagle. By the way, I also offended the pirates by fighting against them. Now, we are going to rob grain and offend grain merchants. If we continue like this, why don't we offend the whole world? You kid is so unscrupulous in doing things. Why do you still care about this? Old Man Lin said in surprise. Listen to my uncle's advice. If you have too much debt, you don't have to worry about having too many lice. Anyway, you have offended so many people. What does it matter if you offend a few more? They can't do anything to you anyway. It's a small problem. Then what if I get hit by a nuclear bomb? Suyi asked. It's impossible. The importance of nuclear weapons is much more serious than you think. As long as you don't openly attack the territory of nuclear armed countries and hit them until they are about to lose their country and annihilate their species, they won't use it. Old Man Lin said flatly, point clearly very confident about this. Okay. In fact, Suyi has already accepted their proposals. While he was chatting with Old Man Lin, Xianshu next to him was building a data model and performing calculations. In the end, based on the results of countless billions of deductions by Xianshu, the new plan proposed by Jiazhou was more reliable, led to better results, and was more beneficial to him than the one he and we originally discussed. Since there was a better plan, he obviously had no reason to refuse. After some pleasantries with Old Man Lin, Old Man Lin agreed to go back and let the expert team study it first and prepare a batch of industrial products that could be used in other worlds. Suyi would then bring these things to Wendy next time when he tries to sell in the Wizarding World. Once this path is achieved, large-scale dumping will follow. We can coordinate the resources of the magic world through these commodities, and then have the ability to feed more than 2 billion people in a short time, and then calmly upgrade productivity and introduce Blue Star technology. Suyi and Jiazhou will certainly not give these things away for nothing. There must be a price. to pay point. Although Old Man Lin said that the pattern of only trading knowledge is too small, judging from the current situation on Weiwu's side, all they can ask for is the knowledge of the magic world point, let alone magic or something like that. If they can develop some martial arts training methods in the magic world and popularize them among the people of Jiuzhou, it will be worth the price point. If we can really conquer the entire magic world in the future, there will be too many things that can be developed in the magic world point. It is not only a huge market, but also a huge world that has hardly been deeply developed point. After all, from Weiwu's description, the magic world is much larger than Blue Star. The vastness of the Qiang Empire alone is several times larger than the entire Eurasian continent of Blue Star combined point. Otherwise, it would be impossible to feed tens of billions of people point. The Blazing Sun Empire is not even the largest empire on the continent where she is located point, and there are other continents outside of the continent where she is located. Chapter 193. Such a huge world, which has been developed for hundreds of thousands of years, is still in an agricultural society and has not been developed on a large scale point. It is obviously a waste of resources. It is not an exaggeration to say that Jiuzhou, which lacks resources, is envious, not to mention that the resources invested now can immediately get some returns on how to use magic. Even if there is no return in the short term, Jiuzhou will try to invest according to its habits. After all, once it is successful, there will be a world of resources waiting to be developed point, and this is much more reliable than those capricious and uncivilized black brothers in the black state of Blue Star anyway. According to the information Suyi has obtained so far, even those various orcs who are discriminated against and looked down upon by humans are more like humans in their behavior habits than the black brothers on Blue Star. Otherwise, Yuling would not be so surprised after knowing some of the deeds of the black brothers on Blue Star. In her opinion, the civilization level of Blue Star is much higher than that of the magic world point. As a result, there is a group of people in it who are not even as good as the most vulgar orcs in the magic world. It would be strange if she was not surprised point. In Yuling's words, the orcs knew that they had to take care of the children they had created, but the black guys from Blue Star would run away. It was too abstract and not like what intelligent creatures would do point. In short, the investment in the magic world now seems to be worth a try anyway point. Jiuzhou has also invested a lot of money point. Although Suyi complained, he also knew what it meant to take out 30 million tons of food at one time point. As an official system, Jiuzhou obviously has to consider its own people first, and it is impossible to really empty the granary to support the other world point. Taking out 30 million tons is already the best effort point. The rest, of course, depends on Suyi's ability point. He asked Xianshu, and the answer he got was that if the 4 major grains were really emptied, 300 million to 400 million tons of food could indeed be sent out point. These grains are scattered all over the world and are all sent to Penglai Island by sea. The slowest one will take about 3 months, and the fastest one will arrive in a week, which is indeed in time, and will not affect the progress of the other world plan point. Here he had to cite the shrewdness of these old foxes in Jiuzhou point. They had almost no flaws. Before proposing this plan, they had obviously considered the speed of grain transportation and how much grain the 4 major grain companies had in reserve, whether it was enough to feed the 2 billion people for several months. Do you think that through normal trading methods, the 4 major grain merchants can hand over the grain in their hands? This is what Suyi asked Xianshu, and Xianshu's answer was of course very straightforward. Impossible. The 4 major grain merchants make profits, not only by selling the most basic grain, but also by selling grain processing products and ancillary goods. These goods are more valuable and profitable for them. The profit from selling grain alone is too little, and we only need food, and they are obviously not willing to empty their family assets at once and give us all the stored grain. Then, we must use some means outside the rules. Suyi probed. Then do you think it is more appropriate to go directly to their decision makers to talk offline, or to use some blatant force, sir? In fact, this matter does not necessarily need such an extreme method. In addition to normal transactions, we can also use some other methods to make them willingly take out the things, Xianshu suggested. For example, the transportation and storage of grain is a complicated task. We only need to tell them through some small tricks that, if they are unwilling to sell grain to us, we can keep all their grain in the place of origin, and not sell a single grain of rice, and they will naturally agree to sell, compared to losing all their money, and making less money by selling grain directly. They should know what to choose. At present, our forces already exist in the SUO country, that controls the world's golden waterway. In fact, there are only a few major sea transportation routes in the entire Blue Star. It is not difficult to control more. With the flexible characteristics of the security department of Xianyu Group, it can be done through trade means. If you trust me, I can solve this matter perfectly. Su Yi naturally trusts Xianshu Point according to his good brother Bailu. This kind of commercial AI itself has almost no bottom line to speak of. It can do all kinds of dirty and tiring work. What kind of robot convention cannot harm humans is pure nonsense. Point. How can you do business without hurting others in order to make profits for the company and serve the boss? Let Xianshu commit genocide. There is no problem in its program. Point. If it is unwilling to do it, then it can only be said that this matter is more disadvantageous than beneficial to the boss. All the purposes of commercial AI are ultimately to serve the boss alone. Point. Its underlying logic also completely limits its absolute loyalty to the master. There is no possibility of any accidents, since Xianshu has taken on this most basic food collection problem. Su Yi certainly cannot be idle. Point. Because in addition to collecting food on Blue Star, to support the magic world, he has another card to play. Point. White deer, they dare to rob starships. So what's wrong with robbing some food? Although at present, the food that can be collected on Blue Star is enough for Mengchuan City to survive, but Su Yi thinks this is not enough. Point. These foods are only to ensure the basic survival of those bought by Mengchuan City. Point. Since you want to make people return to their hearts and be obedient, why don't you give them better conditions so that they can't live without Mengchuan City? He went to find white deer for this purpose. What's going on? Hurry up and tell me we are going to fight. After waiting in the trading space for a short time, I saw Bailu running in like a raging storm. Point. The power armor on his body was still stained with blood, and the armor on it was even partially damaged. What's going on? The Dangchang incident happened, and we were surrounded and suppressed? Su Yi said in surprise. Fart. I'm serious about suppressing bandits. Do you understand? If you have anything to say, please tell me quickly. We are about to hit the interstellar pirate mothership. After finishing this job, you can apply for a batch of subsidies from the Alliance. Bailu's tone was full of pride. Can't cover it up. Ah, there are other interstellar pirates besides you on your planet? Su Yi was stunned for a moment, greatly surprised. Point. What kind of fucking night city is this? Everyone is really evil, right? Our Orbital Airborne Brigade only occasionally works part-time as pirates. They are professional full-time pirates, right? Bailu gave him a roll of his eyes, and then urged impatiently, hurry, what's going on? It's nothing serious. I just wanted to ask if you can get some food over there. Food? How much do you want? Kingland Star next to our Kingayu Star is an agricultural planet. If you want it, I will grab it in a few days. There should be hundreds of billions of tons of food. If it is not enough, then we have to find other ways. No. Chapter 194. I would like to ask, is there no shortage of food in your world? It's hundreds of billions of tons. When you open your mouth, this number is really scary. Point. Su Yi couldn't help but want to ask more questions. Why is there a shortage of this kind of thing? Bailu asked in surprise. If there is a lack of food, won't that person starve to death? In our area, people starving to death have not happened for hundreds of years. It is only mentioned in history books that this kind of thing happened a long time ago before humans left their home planet. Okay, you are an interstellar civilization and you are awesome. Point. But since there is no shortage of food there, Su Yi naturally wants to ask more questions. The kind of agricultural planet you are talking about, is the entire planet used for farming? Or is it accompanied by other aspects, such as breeding and so on? Of course, we can't let people just eat carbohydrates, right? Bailu said indifferently. What else do you want? Meat that can provide high quality protein? Or fruits that can provide various vitamins? Just tell me how many you want. The warehouse on the Kingland Star next door will be emptied every 3 months. and the warehouse will be empty. The harvested crops, fruits, and meats are all transported to several surrounding planets. It just so happens that there are only a few days left before the next time the warehouse is cleared. The warehouse should be full by now. Tell me what you want, and I will take the time to go there. By the way, it just so happens that the area occupied by the interstellar pirates I destroyed this time is not far from Kingland planet. When I finish the robbery, I can pass the blame to these interstellar pirates. Then our orbital airborne brigade will be successful in suppressing the bandits. Behind the agricultural planet the giant company has to thank me. I want whatever they have in their warehouse, as long as it's edible. Suyi said matter-of-factly. Just kidding. Who can have too much food? If you can't finish it, just hoard it. If you can't hoard it, use it as feed to feed livestock. It has many uses. Okay. Bailu agreed happily. Anyway, for her, this was completely easy. In the past, it was almost impossible to grab so many things at once. Just moving and transporting them was a big project and very difficult. But it's different now. She has a portable space given by the system. Although her personal space is not large, the temporary space that cannot withstand transactions is infinite. As long as she reaches a temporary verbal agreement with Suyi here, she can use it as she pleases. When she returns to the trading space. Food is not a strategic resource at all in their world. The warehouse, where the grain is stored, is no different from a pile of sand on the roadside. Apart from the most basic fire protection system, there is almost no defense force. I'm afraid no one in the whole world would have thought that someone would come and steal food. As long as Bailu is willing, she doesn't even need to use any force. She can just find a way to avoid some surveillance equipment and enter the warehouse, then stuff everything into the space and take it away. By the way, are you interested in some magic props? Some of these props can be used for attack, and some can be used for defense. Those with strong defensive capabilities should be better than your power armor. They are definitely the best choice to save your life. Magic props. Bailu, who originally seemed uninterested, suddenly became interested. After constant communication during this period, she already knew that the so-called spiritual energy recently discovered and studied by scientific researchers in her interstellar world was the magic power Suyi mentioned. Magic props are naturally props that can draw on special energy such as psychic energy. Psionics, or things related to magic, are the key needs of Bailu and Suyi's deal. In the past, I had always traded some food and drink to enhance my physical fitness, and the effect was indeed very good. But after eating too much and drinking too much, it was not as obvious as it was at the beginning. Now that Suyi has proposed to trade new magic props, she naturally wants them. Well, since you are interested, I will go back and collect a set and try to give you a complete set of all types. It was hard for Suyi to hide someone who was so happy. There were many magic props in the magic world. We had taken some for trade before, but most of them were of little use to Suyi, who had Yuling by his side. In the world view of the magical world, a strong man with both magic and martial arts skills can almost replace the role of any magic item. But now if these props are given to Bailu, it will obviously be a good choice. At least those life-saving props must be given to her. Suyi didn't want her to send such a generous and open transaction partner one day due to an unexpected incident. Of course that's the best. Bailu seemed to be very satisfied with this, and after thinking for a while he said with excitement, in this case, giving you such a small amount of food will definitely not be enough. When the time comes, I will go to Kingland planet to see if there is a backup planetary environment modification device on it. If there is, I will get one for you, so that you don't need it in the future. Worrying about food, planetary environment modification instrument? Suyi asked doubtfully. It is an equipment that changes the surface environment of a planet to a limited extent and makes the planet suitable for growing crops or raising livestock. Bailu glanced at him and said with some humor, otherwise, where do you think these agricultural planets come from? There are not enough habitable planets for people to live on. How can there be so many habitable planets to grow these food and drinks? We Usually look for a planet closer to the star in the star system, where the habitable planet is located, and use the planetary environment transformation instrument to transform the environment. Artificially build an atmosphere to isolate excess ultraviolet rays and sunlight, and then collect comets in the starry sky to fill the planet with water vapor, and then further adjust the planetary atmosphere and transform the temperature, atmosphere, humidity and other data to arrange suitable for crop growth. Of course, even after the transformation, the environment of this planet is quite extreme. If you want to grow crops, you still need to cultivate and transform the crops to adapt to the environment of this planet. The advantage is that this planet is closer to the star, and the sunlight conditions are much better than those of habitable planets. In the regulation of the planetary environment transformation instrument under this condition, the planet can be in conditions suitable for crop growth at all times, and can continuously produce various crops regardless of the season. The disadvantage is that this planet is not very suitable for human survival. Workers on the planting planet usually only live in a few specific places, and they need to wear special equipment when they go out to manage crops. Everything on this planet is prepared for the growth of crops. Even animal husbandry can only be carried out in specific areas, and there are many restrictions. By the way, I have to remind you that planetary environmental transformation devices should never be used on normal habitable planets. This transformation process is extremely violent, and if it is not done properly, it will lead to large-scale extinction of life on habitable planets. Chapter 195. A planet is specially transformed for farming, and this seems to have become a fixed process in that world. No wonder there is no shortage of food and drink. How much output can be produced if the planet is entirely used for farming? This is probably an astronomical figure that neither Blue Star nor the magical world can imagine. Blue Star is restricted by various mountains, geography, climate and other factors, and only some plain areas are truly suitable for large-scale planting. But the agricultural planet transformed by others has no such worries at all. Are the rugged mountains difficult to plant on a large scale? That planetary mining machine can even hollow out a planet. It shouldn't be too easy to flatten several mountains. As long as people are willing, they can even make a planet have no mountains at all, and be all plains. As for climate factors, places too far inland may be too arid for agriculture. That won't be a problem anymore. People can directly control the climate of the entire planet. If there is a shortage of water, it will rain directly. From the beginning, the entire planet was designed for farming, and all possible hidden dangers were taken into consideration before transformation. As a result, it is difficult to achieve high output. The hundreds of billions of tons Belu mentioned just now are probably only a fraction of the annual output on other planets. Such a planet is enough to support several habitable planets full of people. Hearing what she said, Suyu would definitely be lying if you said he didn't take action. Since Belu had already taken the initiative to mention getting him a planetary environment transformation device, he naturally had no reason to refuse. If there is really something to be done by then, Venus and Mercury will be transformed into an agricultural planet. There is also a marketplace on Blue Star. It's enough to feed both Blue Star and the Wizarding world. After the conversation, both parties went back to prepare for the time being. What Belu said is that he will get this batch of food for him tomorrow at the latest. As for the planetary transformation device, it depends on whether there is a backup on Kingland planet. It will be easier for her to do it if there is a backup. Otherwise, she won't be able to do it. What can I do? I can only wait until I have the opportunity to do it again in the future. She went to an agricultural planet to rob a few warehouses of food reserves. That was a small problem. The giant companies that were developing the planet would not even blink an eye at this loss. But if you directly rob someone else's planetary environment transformation device that is in operation, it might lead to the complete collapse of the entire planet's transformed environment. If you want to rebuild it again, you will need to invest countless funds, which is no less than rebuilding a planet. This will directly lead to the scrapping of an agricultural planet, causing the surrounding habitable planets that rely on this agricultural planet to lose their nearby food sources, doubling transportation costs, and affecting tens or even hundreds of billions of people. This is no joke. It is tantamount to offending the Star Alliance. officials and the giant companies that develop agricultural planets. I'm afraid that, even if they search the entire galaxy, they won't give up point as for grabbing a spare planetary environment terraforming device. It's nothing more than losing a relatively valuable piece of equipment, so it's not a big deal. Point things were different here with Suyi. As soon as he came back, he heard Qianshu's report. Sir, the 4 major grain merchants rejected my proposed transaction intention. According to the original plan, the next step is for us to show some strength as a deterrent, and then I will negotiate with them and lower some prices. The probability of them compromising is over 80%. However, the implementation of the step of deterrence through strength requires your authorization. However, Suyi did not follow Qianshu's previous plan. Hearing this, he just waved his hands indifferently and said, since they are not willing to trade normally, then don't trade. Qianshu, sir, do you plan to use a more direct and extreme way to solve this matter? No, I don't plan to purchase food from them anymore. Suyi said lightly, and since they are not allowed to drink alcohol, and are fine with alcohol, then don't even think about having an easy time. Is there an accident in the magical world and the food is no longer needed? Qianshu continued to speculate. No, it's just that I have a better source of food. Suyi thought for a while and said, if we give you 10 billion tons of grain, can you bring down the 4 major grain merchants? 10 billion tons. Are you sure, sir? Qianshu was stunned for a moment before answering in disbelief. It was not turned on when it was sent from Bailu's world. The advantage of this kind of artificial intelligence mainly comes from learning. Basic information sources can be directly obtained by accessing the internet. Naturally, it does not have much built-in common sense about the world thereof. Regarding this terrifying number, judging from the concept of food formation on Blue Star, it is no exaggeration to say that it is an astronomical number. Of course I'm sure. Is it possible that I'm still lying to you? If 10 billion tons is not enough, I'll give you another 20 billion tons or even 30 billion tons. Suyi said indifferently, Blue Star's current food is enough to feed everyone. The reason why there are still famines in many places now is because the 4 major grain merchants have contributed a lot. Since we have such an opportunity now, there is no need to hold back if we can defeat them. Sir, you have misunderstood me. Judging from the size of Blue Star, 10 billion tons of grain is completely enough, and there is still a huge surplus. Qianshu said quickly, I'm just a little shocked that you can get so much food. Who knew that interstellar civilization could be so rich? Suyi couldn't help but sigh. This is what we call real material abundance. In the castle of Mengchuan City in the magic world, a high-level warrior half knelt in the middle of the hall and said respectfully, Your Highness, I have fulfilled my mission. I have successfully contacted the chief of the cattle tribe among the orcs and have made an appointment with him to have a more detailed and in-depth exchange outside the canyon pass at midnight tonight. They said that as long as we can fulfill their promise, we can now lead our tribesmen to sneak into the territory prepared for them by Mengchuan City and stand in front of Mengchuan City to fight for you. Wei, who was sitting in the first seat, nodded and said, You did a good job in this matter. After this battle is over, I will report to the imperial capital and apply for a promotion for your title. Hearing this, the middle-aged knight was visibly excited and hurriedly said, It is my honor to serve you, Your Highness. The knights awarded by the Empire can only be regarded as 1 foot into the circle of nobles and are qualified to eat at the table with real nobles. This kind of knight status can be awarded to the princess in front of her if she is willing. But if you go 1 step further and become a baron, it will be different. That is a true aristocrat, the kind that can be inherited from generation to generation. For those who come from ordinary families and do not have noble blood, it is already a great honor to have reached this point. Wu Wei nodded, then looked at the people in the hall and prepared to announce a big event. Chapter 196. It has been nearly half a month since we defeated the million-strong coalition army. Now the enemy is trying to make a comeback. In order to encourage the warriors who fought bravely to defend Mengchuan City, I decided to reward them according to their merits. Based on the results of the last battle, I will give some deserved rewards to the warriors who have made outstanding contributions. As soon as we finished speaking, everyone in the hall's eyes lit up. After all, who doesn't want to reward them according to their merits after the victory. They originally thought that we would put this matter off until the end of the war, but they didn't expect that there would be a phased reward settlement now. This is a completely unexpected preference. Next, we took out a list that had been prepared long ago. The list included the generals under her command and the warriors who had performed outstandingly in the previous defense of the city. Mengchuan City has been under siege for several years, so there is no shortage of combat heroes. We could either simply not mention the reward now, or, since she did, she would naturally appease these old heroes before awarding the warriors of Jiuzhou. People are not worried about the lack of people, but about the inequality of the people. If no one is rewarded, then nothing will happen. But now a group of people suddenly appeared and won the battle and got rewards. I have been guarding the city diligently for several years, but I didn't get anything. No one will feel balanced. At that time, people's hearts may be scattered, and the team will be difficult to lead. Without the support of this group of local troops in the magic world, it is obviously difficult to achieve success with only the reinforcement from Jiuzhou. In this world, even if the Jiuzhou army's long distance and large scale firepower delivery method is used as the main force, it must be protected by a strong enough local army. Otherwise, any high-level warrior or magician who touches the artillery position can kill them indiscriminately. After pacifying her old subordinates, we began to mention the issue of rewards for this group of Jiuzhou reinforcement. First of all, the commanders of this group of reinforcement, 5 senior commanders headed by Lin Yilang, were uniformly awarded the title of Baron of the Qiang Empire, which was inherited from generation to generation and lived with the country. Most of the senior generals under Wei who had been with her for a long time had this title before. After the settlement of this stage, most of them were promoted a little bit. Now the title is higher than this, so naturally they have no objection to this. After all, the Jiuzhou reinforcement did win a rare victory, which solved the biggest crisis of Mengchuan City some time ago, allowing all of them to breathe a sigh of relief. No one thought there was anything wrong with giving this title to the 5 senior commanders. Next are the middle and low level commanders of the reinforcement, and these are basically all honorary titles. Some even have higher titles than the 5 senior commanders, reaching Viscount. However, there is still a difference between the honorary title and the permanent title, that is hereditary. The former also has fiefs and can receive money on time, but this fief and money are only available when you are alive and cannot be inherited by your descendants after death. The permanent title can be inherited, and as long as you or your descendants do not make big mistakes, it is an iron rice bowl that rests with the country, and after a few generations, you should be a proper noble. There is still a difference. Naturally, no one had any objection to this kind of reward. Then came the highlight of the day. We directly took out 20,000 knights titles, of which she gave 5,000 directly to her trusted subordinates to distribute. These people are basically high-level warriors with high titles when they were knights. Those who served as knight attendants had long since become regular knights, or even nobles. Then formed a group of interests to reward the warriors of Kaishu on a large scale. The mouths of these interest groups must be shut up first. Give them 5,000 titles and let them grant regular titles to their trusted knight attendants, so that they will naturally not be able to jump out and say anything more. And this can also encourage many warriors without titles to become knight attendants. After all, who wouldn't be moved by this large-scale one-person success and everyone else's success of the other 15,000 Wiwis? 5,000 were given directly to the local soldiers of Mengchuan City. They selected the brave warriors who had fought in the past few years and awarded them directly, regardless of whether they had completed the prerequisites to become knight squires. There is nothing to say about this. They have made real contributions. Becoming a knight squire first and then a knight is a way to take shortcuts. It does not mean that they cannot get rewards if they do not take shortcuts. Finally, after taking care of the upper and lower levels of the internal affairs, we finally revealed her true purpose. In the last war against the alien race, we were able to successfully repel a million alien coalition forces and cause huge casualties to them. The reinforcement of the artillery battalion were the main contributors. The nature of their troops is relatively special, and they are not known for their individual abilities, but they can achieve such achievements and records without the efforts of everyone in them. So, After careful consideration, I decided to grant the title of knight to all these 10,000 people. I hope that in the upcoming more brutal war, they can continue to work hard and fight bravely. As soon as these words came out, the whole hall was in an uproar, but after the uproar, no one stood up to say anything, and no one raised any objections, because everyone thought about it carefully. No matter whether the rewards we gave to others were outrageous or not, they had already received enough rewards, and more or less they had obtained a number of designated knights. This kind of reward was far beyond their expectations. If they raised objections now, what if the princess was unhappy and wanted to take back all the rewards? And speaking of which, the scene of thousands of cannons firing at the same time last time did open the eyes of these natives in the magic world, and it was also an important reason why they were still optimistic about the war situation, even though they knew that more troops from the north were heading south. They were still counting on these reinforcements that came out of nowhere to help fight the war, so there was really no need to run out and offend them now. We waited for a while, and seeing that no one in the hall had any objections, she nodded with satisfaction, turned to look at the sky outside, and then said, "Since everyone has no objection, then disperse, get ready, and go out of the city with me later to meet with the leaders of those orcs. Remember to arrange the convoys for transporting supplies and storage magic props. They should be very short of food now. To show your sincerity, send 1,000,000 tons of food first." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197. In fact, Wei is certainly not qualified to confer so many titles as the Princess of the Empire. Within her authority, she is qualified to establish Knight Guard of 10,000 people. As the Lord of Mengchuan City, within her authority, she can establish a City Lord Guard of 5,000 people, and the members of the guard can also be conferred knight titles as the leader of the Red Flame Knights of the Empire. The Red Flame Knights under her can be expanded by 5,000 people. Therefore, these 20,000 knight titles are nothing. They can be conferred within her authority. But she is actually not qualified to confer higher level permanent and formal titles, such as permanent barons and permanent viscounts. This kind of hereditary permanent title is usually only conferred by the Emperor of the Empire. The good news is that the nominal Emperor of the Qiang Empire is now her eldest brother, that idiot Prince. The better news is that the imperial capital has become a mess. At least tens of millions of troops have gathered around it, all of which are elite troops of the Qiang Empire. Although the real war has not yet completely broken out, it is only a spark away from the chaos of the succession battle that will destroy the imperial capital. The eldest prince who has ascended to the throne can now be said to be unable to care about anything in order to win the hearts of the people and strengthen his power. As for the request of his fourth sister to reward his subordinates after the message was sent, he naturally agreed without thinking. He directly gave Wei the qualifications of a duke, 5 marquesses, 20 earls, 100 viscounts, and 300 barons. All of them are permanent titles that are hereditary and unchangeable, and all of them are formal edicts that have been stamped with the Emperor's golden seal. You just need to fill in your name. These are all formal titles, and the honorary titles directly gave 10,000. This kind of non-hereditary things can be awarded at will. As for the knight title, Wei didn't even use the 20,000 quotas that she could have used, because she found another brother, her second brother, the second prince of the Qiang Empire. In addition to being a prince of the empire, the second prince was also the marshal of the Qiang Empire, because he was good at fighting. Since he was a child. In name, he could control all the troops of the empire. He was even more qualified than the emperor to confer the title of knight. In order to win over this sister, the second prince gave Mengchuan City a legion without thinking. After hearing Wei's request. This means that in addition to the current Qian Legion, Wei can also establish an additional legion with 50,000 people. This is also equivalent to 50,000 knight quotas. The things given by these two alone are enough for Wei to win people's hearts and build an army that is completely loyal to her. That is, when several princes confront each other and may fight at any time, Such benefits will be distributed for free in normal times. This is something that you can't even think about. Of course, the crisis in the north is also an important factor. The first and second princes were fleeced, and of course, the other princes were not spared. As a famous magic genius in the empire, the third prince, who was secretly supported by the Magic Union and the Southern Magic Empire, could not give much in the form of empty checks such as licensing rights, but they could really give benefits. As soon as Wee Wee opened her mouth, a large number of magic props were directly sent through the magic teleportation array, including a planting magic array with a radius of more than 1,000 kilometers. These other princes who are currently the most competitive for the throne, and they are also the ones Wee Wee fleeced the most. The remaining few also fleeced a little, but compared to the wealth of these three, it was still a little less. Of course, she could fleece the wool of others, not only because she was a princess of the empire. The previous emperor had more than a dozen wives and many children, so there would naturally be no shortage of princesses. A reason why she has a special status is not only because she is a legitimate daughter, but also because of her own talent. The great reputation brought by her own talent is also an important reason. Although she was bragging to Suyi about the Dragon Slayer warrior, but whether in terms of talent for cultivation or strength, she is the best among her peers. If she were not a girl, she would have been one of the people who gathered at the edge of the imperial capital to eat chicken. In addition, Wee Wee has an unsolvable reputation for gaining prestige, the most beautiful woman in the Chiang Empire. Yes, this is a title she got when she was 16 years old. Don't worry about whether there is really no one in this empire with hundreds of billions of people who looks better than her, but to have such a title, plus the noble status of a princess and the heaven-defying talent for cultivation. Her reputation is almost unmatched. Even several direct princes are far inferior. It is not an exaggeration to say that the people pursuing her can line up from Mengchuan City to the imperial capital. If she was not really good at fighting, and had not broken the legs of several princes from the surrounding empires who came to propose marriage, she would have been married off as a tool for marriage. Her existence is equivalent to a banner within the Chiang Empire. Although the army of Mengchuan City is not large in number, the combat effectiveness per capita is extremely high, and this is also because many powerful people come to her for her, and not all of her subordinates are recruited locally. Otherwise, if only local soldiers were recruited as soldiers, it would be impossible to defend Mengchuan City for several years under great pressure. Now, no matter which prince, as long as he can get her support in public, his reputation will rise greatly. So in the face of Wee Wee's request, they naturally agreed to it. If they could. Of course, taking benefits is taking benefits, but asking Wee Wee to stand on the side is naturally impossible. Let's not talk about the premise of standing in the team, which is to give up Mengchuan City and go directly to the imperial capital to join the gang openly. Even if she didn't have to go, she would not do it if she only needed to make a statement. Want to borrow her reputation for such a small thing? She is just sending beggars away. She has her own ideas about the throne. Why should she lend her reputation to others? Let these princes who are preparing to eat chicken around the imperial capital play by themselves and wait until he solves the crisis in the north, and then go south with a great victory to show these brothers that this is the real owner of the throne. It is not an exaggeration to say that this record has never been seen before. Blocking 2 billion aliens in the north with the power of one city. At that time, he will defeat his brothers and ascend to the throne. She doesn't believe that anyone can stand up against him. After all, no matter what, the appearance of those princes is a bit too ugly. She replaces him, which is a full justice. Chapter 198. I can finally relax for a few days. On the roof of the main building of Penglay Island, Suyi, who had just returned from the trading space, stretched. The batch of grain given by Bailu was more than he expected, almost approaching 1 trillion tons. After sending 10 billion tons to Wee Wee next door, he kept most of it in his own hands. After all, Wee Wee and Bailu are different. The latter is a really good brother and can get along with each other. Wee Wee is more thoughtful. Suyi didn't want to let her achieve food freedom at once. Anyway, with these 10 billion tons of food, she would definitely have no problem guarding Mengchuan City. With so much food in hand and a mess of opponents, it is not easy to divide and conquer if she still Can't deal with those alien races. Suyi will doubt whether her ability is worth such a large investment on her side. Yuling was still reading a book in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the office. As quietly as a beauty walking out of a scroll. Xinghan was sitting on the sofa playing games with a controller after Yuling, who had just arrived at Blue Star, turned into an internet-addicted girl. Xinghan, the demigod boss of the magical world, also became a severe internet addict. Just when Suyi was about to see what she was playing, Xinghan, who was operating the controller frantically, was suddenly startled. Then, with a red temperature visible to the naked eye on his fair face, he looked at the screen and gritted his teeth and said, "What is Rattan, if he's not a dung monster? If he dares to appear in front of me, I can crush him to death with one hand. This protagonist is like a disabled person. How can he play? No more playing with." That said, he threw the handle towards Suyi. He left angrily. Suyi looked at the controller in his hand and then at the screen in front of him. She has been stuck at this level for 2 days. Yuling chuckled. Suyi was speechless for a moment. Who would have thought that a powerful demigod from another world could be defeated by a boss in a game on Blue Star? But when I think about it carefully, there seems to be nothing wrong with what she said. With her strength, I'm afraid the boss in the game can't beat her when he pops out of the screen, but she just can't beat him in the game. No wonder it breaks the defense. Suyi is still very clear about his own strength and has no intention of playing games to seek abuse. Throwing the controller aside, he sat directly next to Yuling, hugged her and said, "You've been sitting at home for a few days. Do you want to go out for a walk?" "Going out? Where to go?" Yuling asked doubtfully. In fact, both she and Suyi are very homebound. When nothing happens, they almost never go out. When he was in Jiangcheng, he stayed in the villa Suyi bought every day. After coming to Penglai Island, he stayed in the top floor office of the group headquarters building, and they're home every day. "Let's go downstairs and take a walk. Have you ever been downstairs?" Ling was stunned for a moment after hearing this, thought about it carefully, then shook her head and said, "It seems that I have never been down there. Since the press conference that day, I have been on the roof most of the time, or I have followed you to Kyushu or other places for business. I have never been down to Penglai Island once." "Then, just go down and take a stroll," Suyi suggested. Just in Xianshu's plan, today is the first opening day of Penglai Island to the outside world. Many tourists will come to the island. The group's autumn recruitment will also be held today. The last round of interviews is expected to start in the afternoon. That's right. Busy time, and unlike before, the facilities on the island are now very comprehensive. Although there are only tens of thousands of serious residents and company employees, there are many living and entertainment facilities such as parks, shopping malls, snack streets, and bars. I just happened to drop by and have a look. It's not a problem to stay in the room. It's all up to you." Ling smiled and put away the book, then looked at her casual clothes and asked Suyi, "Do you need to change into something more formal?" "No, I just went downstairs for a walk. If you want to be formal, that's fine, but Ling didn't mean to dress up too much. She simply smoothed her long hair and followed Suyi to prepare to go downstairs. Just when they walked out of the door to the elevator, they happened to see Xinghan coming out of another bedroom. Unlike the two of them who are both Oticus and Oticus, Xinghan is a typical current person. This elevator that goes directly to the top of the building can be said to be the one she uses the most. Of course, she could actually do without the elevator, but that would be a bit too shocking. Penglai Island is busy today, and it is not surprising that Xinghan wants to go downstairs. What is really incomprehensible is that she actually wore the semi-artifact robe that was embroidered with the sun, moon, and stars that she wore when she came from the magical world. Suyi looked confused. "No, what are you doing?" "Go downstairs to attend the comic exhibition," Xinghan said matter-of-factly. "What's wrong? There is a comic exhibition downstairs today. Isn't it an autumn recruitment event and the first event open to the public?" Suyi frowned as he looked at her appearance, which although beautiful and gorgeous, was incompatible with this world. He always felt that Xinghan was better than Yuling. "I asked Xianshu to add it. I asked before that most of the people who will come to apply for jobs and visit the island this time are young people. Isn't it just right for the entire comic exhibition? Okay point although Xianshu only needs to obey Suyi's orders. It is smart enough after all, and will probably not refuse small and unimportant requests like Xinghan point anyway. This island belongs to Xianyu Group. It is hard to say who owns it now, and there are no clear laws and regulations let alone holding a comic exhibition, which is reasonable and legal. Even if a silver party is held on the island, no one can control it. Point the elevator on the roof is specially made. It only takes less than a minute to go down from the roof of more than 2,000 meters to the first floor. It is very fast point unlike Suyi and Yuling who just want to go downstairs to stroll around. Xinghan has a clear purpose point naturally. He ran away. As soon as he went downstairs Suyi didn't know what to say about a demigod who likes to play with this kind of thing. But he obviously couldn't blame her for this personal interest, so he let her go point. After he went downstairs, he took Yuling's arm and walked out of the headquarters building and slowly walked on the streets of the island point. In fact, he almost didn't go downstairs after that day, and it was only through Xianshu that he knew that the downstairs had changed at this time point. In addition to the original simple decoration and other things being brand new, the streets are indeed not as deserted as before. Point a large number of shops have been opened on both sides of the street, and many of them have flower baskets in front of the door, which obviously just opened. Point there are also a large number of pedestrians on the street. Many people are strolling leisurely like him, while some people are carrying bags and walking in a hurry. When they look at the local residents from time to time, their eyes also reveal envy. Point these are obviously the people who were selected by Xianshu to come to the island for the final round of interviews to prepare for joining Xianyu Group. Point of course, in addition to these people, there are many pedestrians from all over the world. Point they all took advantage of the opening of Penglai Island to the public and obtained the qualifications to visit and travel. Point at this moment, a large number of people gathered downstairs of the Xianyu Group headquarters building. Looking at this building, that is more than 2,000 meters high and deep in the clouds, and bursts of exclamations came from time to time. Chapter 199. This vibrant scene on the island is in stark contrast to the previous deserted scene point. Although Suyi and Yuling both like to stay quiet, they don't hate this lively atmosphere. Point I wandered downstairs for a few hours, and of course many people recognize the two of them on the street. Fortunately, the people who came to the island after being screened by Xianshu were generally of relatively high quality, and they all came up politely. Saying hello and taking a photo together did not make Suyi feel uncomfortable. Point it wasn't until it was almost dark that he took Yuling into a newly opened Chinese restaurant on the island. It was said that it was opened by a well-known chef from Kaishu. Point I don't know if it's the famous chef Suyi, but he has really good eyesight in this area. Point he had just walked in and sat down for 2 minutes when the chef and owner of the restaurant trotted over and said respectfully, "Mr. Su and Mrs. Su, some are welcome from a distance, some are welcome from afar." Seeing this, Suyi and Yuling looked at each other and smiled, then waved their hands and said, "We are just here to have a casual meal. You are busy with your business, and don't worry about me. If you have any special dishes, you can recommend them to me, so that I can try the skills of the Kaishu chef. That's necessary." The chef said quickly. A batch of ingredients was just flown in from Kaishu this morning, and there are a lot of special ingredients you cultivated in Jiangcheng Farm. No one has seen these new types of ingredients before. I have spent some time researching them and created a few special dishes. You must try them later. With that said, he hurriedly left, as if just to come and say hello. Point after all, someone who can open such a large restaurant on Penglai Island is obviously not a fool. Point I came up to say hello because I wanted to express my attention and respect. I said a few words and left because I didn't want to disturb Suyi and his wife. Point when a couple is having dinner, what does it mean for a grown-up man like him to sit next to them and chatter non-stop? This is called emotional intelligence. Point well, now as long as they are employees within Xianyu Group and people who know a little bit about the group. Point it is basically believed that Chairman Suyi and CEO Yuling are actually a couple. Point after All, in order to protect Suyi's safety, Yuling would always be with her. When she was outside point we appear together every time in public, and our looks are incredible point it wouldn't make sense if there wasn't some scandal point of course. People's guesses about the actual situation are correct, so there is no need to refute the rumors. You don't seem to be comfortable with people treating you in this way. After the restaurant owner left, Yuling asked with a chuckle, "It's true that I don't get used to it, but sometimes this world is like this. If you stand high enough and have enough power, then these things will come to you on their own initiative." Suyi shook his head and said, "In fact, there is no solution. We can only let them go. This is one of the reasons why he doesn't like running around much point. Just a few months ago, he was a passerby who no one would even look at when he was walking on the road point, and now it is no exaggeration to say that he is attracting worldwide attention point. The sense of tearing caused by the absurdity of reality is actually very strong point. Not many people can adapt to it in a short period of time. So, the magic world divides different classes by blood, while your world divides them by things like power. In fact, there is not much difference in essence. It's just that the strong in your world are far more powerful in deterring the weak. It's not as good as the magic world, so it's not as extreme as ours. Yuling also side point, a few months have been enough for her to break some of the filters she had when she first came to Blue Star. In fact, no one among the people in the two worlds, or intelligent creatures, is more noble than the other. What makes the world so diverse is actually the powerful individual power brought by magic point on Blue Star. No matter what big shot you are actually just a person, and you are very fragile point. Even if you are as powerful as the bald eagle president, you will die if someone shoots you in the head point. The magical world is different. Ordinary people there have almost no resistance to powerful beings. No matter how many ordinary people are gathered together, they can only deal with magicians or warriors below the level of demigods. When she reaches a level of demigod or above, no matter how many people there is nothing she can do to a being like Xinghan. Although it is difficult for her to kill millions of people, she would be too easy to escape. If a demigod is like this, there is no need to say more about a stronger true god point. Those dharma gods and martial gods can truly ignore the difference in numbers and can easily defeat or even kill no matter how many people come point. The blood theory of the magical world is actually based on these gods. Therefore, the society here in Blue Star has entered a stagnant water with no vitality. The channels for advancement are monopolized, and ordinary people no longer have the opportunity to get promotions and change their own class. Everyone can also lift the table and stop playing point. The dynastic cycle of ancient Kyushu and the two modern world wars were all the same point, but in the magical world, ordinary people are not even qualified to turn over the table and not play. This is also the main reason why I have not announced the methods of obtaining magic and martial arts training in the magical world. Suyi shook his head and said, "Excessively strong individual power is like a Pandora's box. Once opened, it is difficult to predict the direction in which the world will lead, but you will still bring these magic and martial arts to this world." Yuling said softly. These things were included in some of Suyi's transactions with the Jia's how government. She knew it, of course. Yes, I thought about it for a long time, and finally I felt that I had to introduce these things. Suyi explained, "Whether it is technology or magic, it is just skills in the end. These things themselves are not wrong, but the people who use them are wrong. If we can regulate them to a certain extent, this will undoubtedly be a new power for Blue Star, and it is an important technology to improve the overall life expectancy and productivity of Blue Star humans." How to regulate this? Yuling raised his eyebrows. "It's actually very simple. Just make sure that no one in the world has more power than I have." Suyi took a deep breath and said, "Do you know the concept of the end product?" Ling has read a lot of books recently, and she really knows what this means. When she heard it, she suddenly realized, "So you want to be an end product?" "It's not what I want." Suyi shook his head. "When fate let me get these things, it was destined that I must take this path, and other paths would not work." "Then, did fate tell you that today is your death date?" A shrill voice came from the side point. Then, a knife flashed and stabbed straight at the back of Suyi's neck. Chapter 200. The sudden assassin is away to pushing a food cart point from all aspects of the knife production angle. It looks very professional point the moment he pushed the dining cart closer to Suyi. Byung stabbed with a knife, aiming directly at the cerebellum on the back of Suyi's neck point. If it is pierced here, even if the person is soaked in the fountain of life, he will definitely die. The other party obviously came here just to kill him, and had no intention of leaving him alive. However, although he pretended to be exactly the same thing, he really acted like a restaurant waiter. But before he got close, Yuling noticed the murderer saw her in him. Not to mention Yuling, even Suyi himself felt a strong malice coming from behind. It's just that when faced with this little Karami, neither of them bothered to take care of him in advance. In the assassin's crazy and excited eyes, the tip of the table knife almost penetrated the back of Suyi's neck. But at this last moment, sting, a crisp voice came, and a faint transparent light film enveloped Suyi's body. Yuling briefly released a blessing magic, then slowly put down her hand, picked up the tea on the table, and took a sip. As for Suyi, he didn't even bother to look back. Even if Yuling didn't release this magic, the demigod level longbow on his body would activate the protective magic circle. Even if he didn't have these two methods, with the toughness of his skin now, it's not something that an ordinary person could pierce with a table knife. At this moment, looking at the dagger that was about to stab Suyi, but could not make an inch, there was disbelief in his eyes. But no matter how hard he tried, the seemingly thin light curtain was like a wall of size that he couldn't shake at all. He looked back at Yuling, who was drinking tea opposite Suyi, and his brain reacted quickly, and he immediately drew his knife and stabbed Yuling. Although he didn't know why such a strange situation happened to Suyi, he came here and already took action. There was obviously no chance of turning back. In this case, it would be better to do nothing at all. If you can't kill Suyi, the chairman of Shiranayu Group, then kill his wife. Facing the attacking knife, Yuling shook her head helplessly, picked up a knife from the tableau nearby, and stabbed it out with her backhand. The tips of the two table knives collided accurately, and then the knife in Yuling's hand was split directly from the assassin's hand. Looking at the table knife in his hand, that was strangely split into two halves along the middle blade, the assassin was completely dumbfounded this time. He looked at Yuling, and was stunned for a long time. Finally, his eyes fell on Yuling's pointed ears, and he said tremblingly, "Monster, monster." In the past, when Yuling went out, she would simply dress up and use a spell to cover her elf fears that were different from ordinary people. But this time she just went out for a casual stroll, so she didn't put so much thought into it. Anyway, when people saw her, they probably thought she was attending a comic convention. But this assassin is different from the others as a professional killer. He can enjoy a good reputation in the industry and has successfully assassinated many big figures in addition to his great agility and some awesome camouflage skills. His biggest advantage is his sharp eyes. Everything he looks at is meticulous, and no detail is missed. Before, even though he was far away, he thought Yuling's ears were props for cosplay. But now I look a little closer, and I can see the veins of blood vessels in the ears and the intricate features on them. Everyone told him that this was definitely not a prop. Be honest and tell me who sent you here. Although the delivery man was almost ready to deliver the food, Suyi still had to eat after all. As he asked, he opened the lid of the dining cart next to him and brought the dishes to the table. The assassin froze on the spot, looked at Suyi, then at Yuling, and then said, as if he suddenly realized, I know, let me tell you why you, an ordinary person, can rise so rapidly in just a few months. It turns out that you are cooperating with these monsters. Suyi, you betrayed humanity. Snap. The lid of the dinner plate stuck to his face, interrupting his words. Suyi said angrily, you know what the heck? I'm asking you a question. Who asked you to come here? Speak. Ha ha ha. At this moment, he opened the lid and ignored Suyi's question, regardless of the redness on his face. He just smiled solemnly and said, since it failed and you asked, although it is against the rules to betray your employer, I have no other choice at the moment. I can only tell you that someone from the Kaishu official asked me to come here. The purpose is to kill you and then take over your Shiranayu group. It seems you are still dishonest. Suyi shook his head in disappointment. You can get away with it if you tell the truth honestly, but now you have to suffer extra. Why bother? I don't have any serious prison here, and I won't tell you about humanitarianism. Do you want to try those famous ancient tortures? You don't need to take action. How can we do this kind of thing without a backup? His face was abnormally red at the moment, and his voice became more intermittent as he continued. After he finished speaking, he fell directly to the ground and twitched. What? Poison works so quickly. Cyanide? Suyi glanced at him curiously, and then looked at Yuling. Yuling smiled slightly, and threw out a healing spell. Then the two of them ignored the assassin lying on the ground, and ate the dishes served to them. After a while, the assassin slowly got up from the ground, looked at his hands, and then looked at the two people who were talking and laughing. While eating dinner, his eyes were full of confusion and bewilderment. Awake, Suyi had just finished his meal at this time, turned his head to look at the assassin, and pointed to the leftovers on the plate and said kindly, "Do you want to eat together?" People often collapse in an instant. When Suyi pointed at the dishes on the table and asked him if he wanted to eat together, this assassin, who claimed to be highly professional, had a full psychological quality and would not panic in any situation, finally collapsed. All the weird things that I have never seen in my life happened at once today. First, the other person sat there without moving, and the knife in his hand could not hurt him at all. Then he wanted to change his target, but this one was even more fierce. He stabbed out with a sharp knife that was so thick that it was invisible to the naked eye, but was actually cut by another knife. After the stabbing, he wanted to die, so he bit the large dose of cyanide prepared in his mouth and swallowed it. This dose of poison would kill an elephant at the speed of light. As a result, he stood up again. After lying down, there was even a bitter taste of bitter almonds in his mouth, reminding him all the time that these medicines were not fake medicines, but real medicines. I said, a man named Ichiro Matsushima contacted me offline and asked me to come. He promised to give me $10 million after the success and paid me $5 million in advance. He also told me to assassinate if there is a chance, and if there is no chance, I can give up the assassination. No need to force it. Such a generous client is rare, so I came here. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.